It's not different from going to a dinner party or whatnot, and you find some people gravitate towards each other because of the resonance, and other people can't stand being near another one because of the distance. It's still about energy. It's still the same. All right, what else do we get out of this thing? Encourage development of arc mentality, connection to source, healing, rescue of dependent life forms. I don't know whether Ash will talk more about this today or not. We've been debating whether we will have time. But the ARC project itself ranges from the anchoring of the Rouchet scepter pillars, which is the major expression of our involvement in everything, from the planetary through the universal level. But from the standpoint of 3D perception, the ARC project also includes the preparation and development of our own personal fields in order that we can be walking portals for other dependent life forms. All right. People have curious ideas about what a service contract is. Personally, I would say that developing your fields in order that you can be a walking portal for other dependent life forms, hosting other life forms out when the time comes, is the most gracious, the most reverent and inspired service contract anybody can choose to carry. It is really the most important one that concerns us in a more direct and personal way. But the ARC project, when we talk about it, does actually range from the universally and the cosmic significant level, all the way to what appears to be that which just concerns us in the here and now. And the ambition that I would love all of you to feel is a real burning desire to build your fields so that you can become the most magnificent healers this planet has ever seen. Because I know that's why most of you are here. But it seems like a long way away from where you are sitting right now to the very idea that you can just go and have just stuff disappear through you. But believe me, some of you are going to see that happen. And it won't be very long before we do either. All right. Yeah, realizing potential now, that's probably it. I'll skip the middle bits. All right. I don't really want to spend time. There's tons and tons to do this afternoon, so I've really squashed all this up. Lots and lots of words squashed into a small space. Feels like a small shoe. We'll stop now and reconvene. What time is lunch today? Is there any likelihood that that could be early? Yeah. Yeah? Well, look, why don't we try and pull that forward to as soon after 1 as you can manage. Do the lunch break then. Finish off your quiz totaling and get your paperwork ready. And what shall we say? We resume at 2:15, Mac?
Anyway, let me get back in body here for a second. Boy, that was a pretty strong one. Boy. Okay. Okay, I need to make a 2-minute bathroom run. I've got to get back in body. I can't read when I'm this out. All right, let me see where you can go. Okay, I'm going to go into this real quick. You know what you could do now?
What?
The explanations on the test. Okay. I'll give it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, what we're going to do now is Az is going to give, is everybody back that wasn't at the, okay, seats look pretty full. All right, Az is going to give the first level of the interpretations on the test you took this morning, and there's a reason why you took the test. After he does that, we're going to go through, very quickly, a piece of material, new material, on what are called the nodes and the notice and your shields, and find out what why that test was important, because there's an element of something you're going to find out about your shields through that test that we're going to use to amplify the effect of Technique 7 when we get to that. So he's going to go through the first levels of analysis of what that test means. And through that test, you should have been able to find out what frequencies you're running most strongly now, either Ire, Mane, or Manu. And that key piece of knowledge can tell you a lot of things. So I'm going to let Az do the interpretations for you so you can begin to understand. By the end of this, you should know what flame group you're a part of. The blue, the violet, or the gold, as far as who you're working with right now and whose frequencies you're running. Having that knowledge will allow you to amplify Technique 7 and everything you do from there forth. So this is why we introduced the test here. We didn't even know we were going to do this, but they had asked us to do this. So I'm going to hand this over to Az, and I'm going to go out there and get back in body for a second. And because I don't know, if you ever get to the level where you're doing ordinations like these, it's like your eyes end up out here, and you can't focus here to read anything or to see anything. It just takes a few minutes for the fields to contract back in. So I need to go get Embody. He handles electricals much better than I do. And when I get hit with his electricals on the back wall, it just kind of bounces me right up and out of body. So I'm here, but I'm also here. So I'm going to hand this over to you. We're going to do this part first, and then we'll go right into the program where you're going to understand what finding this information out is about in relation to becoming able to manually and consciously work with your Maharic shield and with your shield coding. Okay? So, for you.
We're going to about 10 minutes in this?
Yeah, just about
10.
10. Yeah.
Okay. In 10 minutes. Huh. All right. Now, just to take you through this level very quickly. You will all by now, I hope, have managed to do your totaling and entered the scores into the various circles, triangles, and over the page, the heart-shaped things, which were used before we discovered how the heart-shaped symbol is created, so it will be changed to an Akasha in future, Liz. Good suggestion. All right. Now, I've got 10 minutes, all right, so bear with me. Now then, when we're looking at this level here, we're looking at a classical model used in psychology and psychiatry. All right? I said this morning that it isn't our business to spend time engaging in lectures that patronize your own relationship with aspects of your own shadow. That's your business. But your notes provide you with brief explanations of what the shadow characteristics, because that's what these spheres are about. These are about the shadow influences running through your party, as I was explaining before lunch, all right? The point that gets significant is when I tell you that the structure of what has been used in this particular piece of self-research is that each of these represents an expression of Ire, Mane, and Manu. Do you remember I explained to you that there are 1,728 elements of aparte in each of the 12-dimensional levels, right? Well, this is what your aparte is doing in D1, 1,728 little receptors that are receiving a combination of what I refer to as the angelic influence, the angelic thrust, as compared to that that's running from the shadow. Now, the energetic characteristic of this, so 1, 4, 7, and 10 are all Ire in their orientation. 2, 5, 8, and 11 are Mane in their orientation. Ire pulls, Mane pushes, magnetic electrical. I also pointed out to you that in the structure of creation, the void exists, creates Mane, creates Ire, expresses Mane, and returns to Manu. So you will find always that 3, 6, 9, 12, which are Manu, they are the products of the interaction between the Ire component and the Mane component of what you call yourself. And what you're seeing through your scores is the balance or imbalance, if you like, between the angelic consciousness and the shadow and shadow dancer parts of consciousness. That's what these are doing. And the interplay between those will determine what each of the Manu expressions are. The Manu is not in this sense able to override. It is a product of these two. But there's a point that comes when you look at the totals where the Manu becomes much more significant because it's seeking balance between Ire and Mane. Indeed, all of these are. But the point of greatest significance is when you look at the summary totals. Now, when you bring these totals down to here, as I suggested this morning, each of these corresponds to a stage in development between the simplest, most uncomplicated, childlike incarnate being that becomes exposed to the games that are played out due to the programs running through grids on the planet. And as you begin to awaken, you will make decisions, you will make choices, you will form associations with people, you will follow certain life paths or career paths that will bring to you the lessons that you need to derive the strength to embody more of the angelic mind. And as you do that, you will find that that will be reflected in the scores as you begin soul integration, over-soul integration, and avatar integration ultimately. All right? Now, taking what I've just been talking to you about at the 3D level, here is an illustration of someone who is still pretty much asleep. And the kind of typical score levels you'd see is where there is a very low, a skew downwards in the avatar influence, even though the oversoul and the soul levels are expressing quite strongly. The response at this level is still low. So what you're seeing in a situation like this is that there is a strong connection at the soul and oversoul level, but it's not yet being fully received by the incarnate identity. And that, therefore, suppresses the avatar influence. Okay? The avatar influence can only express as these become integrated. And what we're saying when we talk about that is that as we begin to utilize techniques that reverse the polarity and the apathy in our shields, it isn't possible. It's a thing I was driving at before we broke, and that is the extent to which in this realm of conscious awareness that you have choices in which you can make a difference just by the way that you deal with the everyday effects of the programming, running in your own fields and through the grids. If you create time for yourself to choose differently, remembering who you are, what you are, and what it is you're trying to achieve, you will reinforce all the technique work by extending your technique to a daily ritual almost, in which your angelic presence is the identity that you're preferring to bring into manifestation now. And as you do that, you'll really accelerate the effect of the techniques. And the effect of that will then be seen. I wish I had someone that slid these around for me. maybe when I get promoted. Got to be careful. So, taking what I'm saying absolutely literally at face value, what you then begin to see as the physical incarnate presence begins to get it, then you see the score will have risen from something in the 50s to high 50s, and you'll start to see the expression occurring where the degree of self-awareness that's being held in the 3D conscious moment will cause this score to rise. And you will see that the scores will also be rising at the avatar and oversoul level too, because of the response that's being reflected in the shields at this level. All right? The fact that this is low would be misleading to think that there is something wrong here. There's nothing wrong at all, because what's going on here is there's an interaction occurring at the soul and 3D incarnate level, right, which is pulling energy through, and momentarily this could be seen as the dark night of the soul effect, really, all right, where the inner conflict is occurring before one stabilized the effects of the transition. And if we go on now to the stage that follows, when this dark night of the soul business, which doesn't happen once but sometimes repeatedly for a while, you then see that the scoring at the soul level will peak. And you'll notice that some of the scores at the back end of here, again because of the energetic shifts all the way down through the dimensional levels of self and identity, they will get concentrated in this area, which is a natural process of consolidation. So if you're looking at a picture like that, don't think, oh dear, my connection with my avatar self isn't very bright, not very good. It simply is that. The process always involves the fact that you can accrete levels of frequency only by degrees. It will occur in waves or cycles. There is a limit to what the fields can actually absorb. And so it just reflects that the energy is bulging in here as it's coming into the field, has been drawn in and stabilized. And that would express all the way through Dayan activation, the apathy reverse, and all the rest of it. And then you start to see for the first time that the level where amusingly, Ma said, let's say on probation, that we little avatars are actually on probation because we still are. It's a good sobering way of looking at it. But at this point, you'll notice that not only have the scores risen above the levels seen in all the other levels, but now we're starting to see a flattening. In other words, the frequency flowing into all of the shields at all of the levels, and all the little parties are beginning to respond to the work that you're doing, right? You're starting to pull more primal life force currents through. You see that this is reflecting the fact that the shields of the entity or vehicle have now become accustomed to holding frequency, so that the scores have risen, and the difference between them going across is flattening out. All right? So, if you refer to your pages that look where you have your scores in here, as I explained, the totals for the ERA come out of the answer groups for dimensions 1, 4, 7, 10, the Mane from 2, 5, 8, and 11, and the Manu from 3, 6, 9, and 12. And the scores in here, are those which show you the current amount of primal life force current that you're presently able to pull into your shields directly as a result of any blockages or field interference that exist in the shields. Now, this is more about what are we going to do about it. Okay. So, if you have, if the ERA heart shape is the highest score, it's indicating a number of things. The object, I should say, is to work to bring the ERA and the Mane scores into balance as far as possible. And that, of course, will then reflect through the Mane score. What are we asking? Yes, you should have that in your packs. Yeah. If you copy across onto your pages the things that have been written onto the mylar, which is stuff that happened this morning. Right, a person who's presently scoring highest in the ERA heart shape is directly associated with the Braharama founders race line, the three founders families, the race lines. The person who's scoring highest in ERA is out of the Braharama family, with an association with a violet flame, and sensitive to dark sapphire and pale pink as a frequency expressed as color. The caps.
That would be their capstone rays.
Okay. What Ash is saying is to tell you that these are what we refer to as your capstone rays. These are the principal capstone nodes, all right? These are the capstones because they relate to the point of origin at the Rishik level. You know, it gives you the connection in terms of the founder's family race line. And it shows you what frequency expression out of the primal life force currents you are most sensitive to, and which you can use as a point of strength by drawing more of it into your fields. All right. The people who have had the highest score in Mane are from the Seraphim founders race lines. They're associated with a gold flame, and they're particularly sensitive to a combination of dark silver and pale yellow. And then finally, those who have the highest Manu score are associated with the Elohai Elohim family, associated with the blue flame, and are sensitive to pale silver, pale turquoise. Now there are some detailed things in your notes which will provide specific illustrations of how each of the types in either of these categories. Now, there is at least one person, I'm just getting this. There's one person who has an equal score between Manu and Manet. In a case where either the Ire or the Manet is of an equal score, give or take 1 point, with Manu, then you would actually take the Manu as the founder's race line family that you're associated with. And you would utilize the elements of information that are provided here under the Manu category. If you ever move to work with the corresponding equal one, whether it's Manu or Ire, that's an option you could exercise. You wouldn't do any harm. But if you wanted to know which one to choose, it would be the Manu, always. Okay? I'm over my 10 minutes, so I'll just point out that the specific tone to which an Ire dominant person is sensitive is ta'asha, or sorry, ta'ashe. And you would utilize the breathing form if you wish, but you would do it in combination with creating your own family line, your own founder's race line song. This is the one that will connect you to the strength that is inherent to the entire race line that you're associated with and from. And by using this particular song and utilizing the color tones as frequency, you can actually pull more of that frequency into your fields, which has the effect of healing in the fields. Very specific, very attuned to you and your race line. Your tribal shield is sensitive to it entirely. Okay? And you will actually perform frequency balancing at the level of primal life force currents by working with those things and incorporating the breathing technique which is listed under this section. All right? So in the same way, a person who was predominantly associated with Manet, okay, they would use hara-ra as the sound tone. Hara-ra. H-A-R-A-R-A. Hara-ra. Yes. But I'm pointing the tones I'm pointing out and the names of the families and the colors are not in your book because they were brought this morning. All right? So you make a note in your books of these things. So the things that are not in your book are the specific tone associated with Ire, which is ta'ashe, and the color frequencies dark sapphire, pale pink, associated with the Braharama and the violet flame. And the Ire, the tone is Hara-Ra. The Manet, yeah, is Hara-Ra. And the color frequency is dark silver combined with pale yellow. The family line is Seraphim, and that is a gold flame family. And finally, the Manu is Ma'a-Ki. Ma'a-Ki. Ki, K-E-E. K-E-E. The color frequency sensitivity is pale silver combined with pale turquoise. The founder's family line is the Elohai Elohim, and that is the blue flame. In each of these notes, very brief notes, because we declare that it's not complete yet, and there's a whole bunch of things to do with tangents that correspond to the node, which is much more detailed. What was I going to say? Apart from the breathing. I can't remember. It's gone. Yes, I know. All right. Just in terms of your own development and the kind of evidence that I know that you look for contact, the Ire is much more associated with sound. If you're Ire dominant, look towards developing your inner hearing. Yeah. I should just say and balance it with the inner visual. The Manet is much more keyed to visual stimulus. So working with symbols, codes, Vector codes and such like, and also developing inner sight are the areas of strength that the Mane dominant family line are associated with. And the Manu, typically, since Manu is a product of both Ire and Mane, tends to produce a rather more difficult one, which is called direct cognition. Absolute knowing, just instantaneous awareness of information. So you don't get initially any corresponding information coming either from the inner hearing or the inner sight. You just simply know. And that's a little challenge to one's spiritual development maturity in terms of the confidence that you can feel. And that's suggestive of some other interesting personal observations that I'll leave you to make on your own. But it's a fun one to play with. If you happen to be that one, it's a little more difficult. Okay? Now, I'm well over my 10. I'm into 20 minutes, and we've got a lot to do. So if you'll just let me leave it at that. There'll be more, I hope, in May when we start to move into more detail on the tangents and some of the related material.
I'm sure there will be. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I was actually going to comment on that before you put it away. I was going to comment on it before you put it away. Okay. The only thing that I wanted to add, or just add a little bit of detail to, is one of the last things that Az was talking about as far as the visual dominant, audio dominant, or direct cognition dominant. Now, if you're a person who is, your capstone is an Ire frequency right now, if it's an Ire frequency, that means you'll actually be probably more drawn to using the tones as opposed to playing with the symbols. But what it's saying is you need to use both, but you need to put more symbol work in to counterbalance it. All right, you need to bring more Mane in if you're running just Ire. The opposite goes for the Mane. If you're running Mane, that means you would have a propensity to your, let's say, learning style or learning modality would be oriented toward light, toward visual, toward symbols. All right, you'd be more visual than hearing, and it's good to counterbalance that with using more tones, even if it's more natural, seems more natural to you to use the more symbol work. So there's a balancing. You can balance, but if you know you're one dominant, you can do things that bring up the one that's not dominant. All right. Now, if you're Manu, that's pretty much that represents a balance level. Actually, the people that have the dominant Manu, but you can still have either of those out of balance with each other, which we haven't gotten into that level of analysis. If you're Manu, it's good to work with both and just kind of like switch off and on with, a little bit more symbol dominant work or a little bit more tone dominant work. Now, I think there's one more thing I wanted to comment on this. What was it? Something. Oh, yeah. Just wanted to point out that on what page is this in your books? Page 32 in your books. That chart is the key to understanding what your capstones are, first of all, and where those tones come from, if you haven't figured this out yet. There's that double chart, and I don't have it on the Mylars right now. It's the double chart that shows the two Cathara grids with all the color rays and all the sound tones that go with each one of them. The capstones represent, your Christos capstones are your D10, 11, and 12 frequencies. So you would have one of those dominant, and that would imply which Rishik capstone would be the dominant one, either 13, 14, or 15. All right? The Rishik capstones are what is your dominant primal light field frequency that you're running right now. And the Christos capstone is what part of the Christos Divine Blueprint are you primarily running right now. Now, what you'll find with this test is these things will change. If you took this test in like even a week from now, you might find a change in the score. So these are considered mutable capstones. Now, the family affiliations that go with them mean that at this time you are working primarily with that family of consciousness. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are directly out of that family of consciousness. Some people, now every one of us have parts of ourselves stationed in each of those primary founders race lines. We have one in the blue flame group, one in the violet flame group, and one in the gold flame group. When we find that these change. It means you're working with one particular group at this time. Now each group, there's going to be a point in time where we get a level of analysis on this, that every one of the rays, as we call them, the rays, have a whole set of lessons that go with them. And they also imply a whole set of karma that goes with them. So there's a whole level of analysis that comes out of this later where you can actually find your core template, which would be not just the mutable one, the one you're running right now that might change a week from now or 2 years from now, where if you were working with violet flamers right now, you're learning certain lessons, you're picking up certain frequencies, but when that changes, it means you might be working with gold flamers. To find out if I am, a keeper of the gold flame, blue flame, or violet flame, that would come by finding the constant, which has to do with the Beta Huva scans that they're going to be teaching either in France. They're going to introduce it either in France or in May in Paxos, where we get to be able to see the center coding in the center of the DNA template. And that would reveal the core dominant programs. Some people, now if you're blue flame, you can run all of the flames because D13 was the original light field, and out of that came the pale yellow light field and the violet light field, or the pink magenta light field. So blue flamers actually have the coding for all of them in the templates actively in the body, which means they could run them in this lifetime. If you're a person who has at the core center template the gold, you would be able to run the gold and the violet, but you wouldn't be able to run the blue, but you're still connected to the blue. You could run subharmonics of it, but you couldn't anchor, the flame thing. So there's a lot more we can learn with this. So the family affiliations that you'll find now that you have, these are the fields of consciousness that a part of you resides within, that you are actively bringing that part of you and all of the lessons down the dimensional scale that go with it. So this is where I just want you to know that it doesn't mean it's like not sealed in stone. This one, like, okay, I'm a Brahmarama. Right now I'm expressing as a Brahmarama, but I actually might be in Elohi Elohim. That might be my core family group. So I just wanted you to understand the distinction between those. All right, that they were explaining that to me. And we're going to be taught how to find that core family group, but it's just as important to know what you're working with right now and who you're working with right now. Okay, now we're going to go on to Mylars. Okay, next one, please. Now, this gets fun. We start to find out what the heck are these capstones about anyway? What does this have to do with my DNA and my shield and my flame body? Here's where we begin to find this information out. Now, this is a graph that's not in yearbooks. I'm again pulling some things from the Dance 4 program that weren't part of the supplement, just to explain something to you. You don't really need to work with this directly. I want you to understand where the VECA codes and the ECA codes come in that we've talked about in the Dance 4 program. They're specific mathematical symbols with corresponding tones that activate very specific coding in the shields. Now, to understand what that coding is, they're called the void codes, all right? They're the codes that actually open up the radial body, so the levels of the radial body can blend together and you can fully activate the whole flame body. When we use VECA and ECA codes in the Dance 4 programs, like for instance, ECA code number 3, the Akasha, the one we've been working with even in this program. All right, that's number 3. Number 3 ECA code corresponds to this lock. Now, if we remember, think about this first in universal terms. Remember this shape when we were doing the ECA maps of the God World gates? All right, that's the VECA system. All right, let's say this is the VECA system. Here's our universal stargates, the primal stargates of our light field. There's parallel, and there's the parallel light field. Now, each of these codes correspond to the locks that exist, the density locks, these big locks, these diamond-shaped ones, not the little square inside, but the diamond-shaped one. All right, these are the density locks that hold the levels of the radial body separate from each other in the process of ascension or going through a stargate. Literally, all those locks release, and the whole, if this was a body, if you're looking at it on a smaller level as your body grids, literally your radial bodies would all fold up together, and you'd turn into light and then be able to unfold on the other side and pop up on the other side. So when we work with VECA codes, what we're working with now with the flame body activations, working with VECA codes will amplify that process. But you don't have to work with VECA codes. You don't have to get the Dance 4 programs if you don't want to get them. But the IANI are highly suggesting that if you do want the challenge of actually getting the physical body through a gate, not just being able to, whenever your natural time comes, you're safe when you're leaving your body, to go on to your next life. If you want to physically go, you need to work with the VECAs as well to get the acceleration that they would give you. Now, this gets interesting because this is technically one of the maps to the VECA maps. You can see each of these, we look at number 1. Number 1 isn't shown on here. It's listed as, it's one of the center locks. The locks that aren't shown on the center because it would convolute the drawing so you couldn't really see anything. These locks listed here. Okay. Okay, the codes, code number 1, code number 6, code number 11, code number 12. They unlock the, and that goes for either side, either the VECAs or the ECAs. They unlock the center lock. So there's a series of 4 locks that are in there as well. We've been working with, we're up to here in the Dance 4 programs. They've given us up to this level of coding. Now what that means is when you look on this chart, I'll start with 2 because 2 you can see where it is on the chart. It's not at the center. That would release this seal that corresponds to, now if you can see, it's harder to see on this one. I'll try 4. You know why? Because 4 is easier to show the line connections. We'll try 4, the Da VECA code. And now the next level up it would be the Akasha Aya code. And I'll show you what that means too, the difference between these two in a minute. But number 4, here, if you follow these lines straight out, it would unlock this density lock and that density lock up there, the parallel primal light field and our primal light field. So literally, if you trace the lines through on this diagram, it shows you that these seals that correspond to these symbol codes are unlocked, that they unlock the locks that pertain to them. Now that's on the universal level. That's not just on your body level, but it is also on your body level. And that's where it gets kind of fun. Now I'll show you another thing about ECAs and VECAs, which is this. I'm not going to get heavily into this. We cover some of this lightly in the Dance 4 program right now. Just so you see where these codes apply. Now, let's say this is our 12 of our stargates, okay, in our universal VECA. Let's say these are the 12 major stargates in the universal ECA, okay, the ECA inner worlds. These would be the next level up, the Akasha. These would be the Akasha A, and they would be the Akasha Aya gates, okay? That's the stairway to heaven, just kind of strung out real flat and just showing the 12 gates. Now, when we use VECA codes, we're opening those locks between these two, between the VECA systems and the ECA world, or the inner worlds. When we use the ECA codes, we're opening the lock systems that go between these two. So when we're using the Akasha code, for example, that is not just opening between the inner ECA and our VECA universe. It's opening all the way up to the Akasha level. So you're actually connecting with a part of yourself that's manifest in that God world, which would also have a part that's manifest in the ECA world, as well as you down here. So it just shows you where these codes fit. They are like the things that unlock the doors between the sets of the different stair levels in the stairway to heaven. Now, I'm not going to get into this stuff heavily. We haven't even covered it a whole lot in the Dance 4 program yet. It has to do with what strand activation level is required, and that's sustained strand activation level. You need to be able to do a D12 burst to be able to get through in the first place, but then you can downscale again. If you can't hold D12 frequency, you don't have to live in some of those other places. I'll cover it briefly. For this world, which is our VECA system. Now it's base 12. Our gates are base 12. That means there's 12 dimensions, but they have 12 subfrequency bands in each one. Okay? It's called ×1 accretion. Now, this you're going to see in a minute. Each level of manifestation going up the stairway to heaven, it's a base 12, but it's a what would you say, a multiple of base 12. The only ones that are different are the inner ones that are like base 12.5, and I'll show you what that means in a second. Now, for a regular base 12 system, it corresponds with DNA strands 1 through 12. The biological minimum to live in one of these systems is actually 3 strands. All right, so like things that live in our worlds down here are at least 3 strands. Now, when you get over to here, it's base 12, but it's base 12.5. There's 12 dimensions, but each one has 12.5 subfrequency bands in each, which means there's more frequency in each of their dimensions than there is in ours down here. That's the inner echo world. What that means is to live there biologically, you would need to live just in their density 1. You would need a minimum of 4.5 strand activation level. Now, the bridge zone project that we're going to talk about later has to do with creating a frequency modulation zone between these two where beings with a 4.25, which is, now 4.5 strand activation means all of 4 and half of strand 5 would have to be activated. It will reduce that to a 4.25, which is only a quarter of strand 5 has to be activated, which isn't too, there's a big difference, even though it seems to be small. That's a lot of difference as far as frequency and how fast you can activate DNA. It means, though, that to be taken, if, God forbid, there should ever need to be an evacuation or something, and you needed to go through into the Eka, inner earth temples, you would need to be able to activate the flame body enough to do a D12 burst, which is what we're training our bodies to do now with the flame activations, and then the DNA template would calm down on the other side, but it would have to be able to sustain at a 4.25 level to enter the bridge zone spaces and to go all the way into the inner ecosystems. It would have to be a 4.5 strand activation level. This progressively goes up. When you go into the Akasha worlds, you need a minimum of 6 strands activated to be in their density 1 system. When you go up to the next level, the Akasha A, you would need a minimum of 9 strands activated. To be a sustained activation, to be able to be in their density 1 system. All right? And when you get up to the Akasha Aya, you would need a minimum of 12 strands activated at all times to be in their density 1 system. So it just shows you, it gives you an idea of how this progression up the stairway to heaven works, and getting through the gates. And it's a progressive process of what they call accretion, or bringing frequency in, pulling frequency into your template and progressively activating the template. So I just wanted to see a little bit of that, and how the Veka and Eka codes. There's also something called scepter codes that they haven't given us them yet, but there'll be 12 of those. And then there are Templar Ruche codes that are the ones that unlock the last level up into the first level of creation. We won't be working with these for a while, probably. Maybe the scepters, they're going to start giving us some, because we are assisting in the process of anchoring the 12 Ruche pillars from here. So some of us will be working with the scepter codes, and probably 1 or 2 of those to bring enough frequency to anchor the pillars through. But right now, most of us just need to work with these. So if you're doing the Veka programs, or the Dance for programs, we're working directly with these codes to make the seals open more rapidly. Even if you're not working with the Veka programs, the flame body activations that we've been doing in this workshop will progressively work to open these. They will assist in opening them, but it won't be as quickly as if you work with these codes directly. But it's still, it's still good. So it's like you don't have to work the Dance for programs. It really depends on whether you're in a hurry to get your body to go through a gate, or whether you just kind of want to take it easy in life but make sure you're safe, and make sure that when your natural time ever comes, that when your body goes its natural way, you can go your natural way and not get hung up in the shadow mess or anything like that. It's really a very personal decision. Our souls usually make that decision on that level of consciousness, where they decide when it's time to be in a body and when it's time to not be in a body. It's not a decision that's meant to be made. Like, we're not supposed to go out and say, oh, well, I decide I want to be dead now, get rid of my body, so I'm going to throw it off a building. That doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work, we're saying suicide is not a good choice, because first of all, if your soul and your oversoul and your avatar agreed with you that it was time for you to drop the body, you wouldn't have to kill it, okay? It would naturally shut down. It would either get a disease or have an accident or something like that was planned from the higher levels. Or you might just go to sleep, and people say, oh, died in their sleep, I don't know what from, but you left. So suicide is just the ego trying to run the show of the avatar, and that's, so we don't endorse that. But if you want to get the body through, we do recommend doing the Dance for programs. We're using literally using the momentum your body can generate externally to continually reset the natural spin on the Merkaba fields on the outside, because that will reset the ones on the inside, and it will also release these codes faster. Now, when we're working with the flame body activations and getting into the rays that we're running, I want to show you one more thing. Yeah, go ahead, put that on. Go ahead. Thank you. Now, here's that same thing. Remember, forget the bodies are there for a minute. Remember, this is that Veka map again, right? The 12 stargates with the parallel, with our light fields, and the parallel light fields, and the parallel universe 12 stargates. We can take that down to the microcosmic level, right into our own bodies. And the same thing applies. The seals that were on that other map are the seals between our different radial body levels. We have a parallel self on parallel Earth. We have our physical body here, the dimensional selves, right? Now, we also have our light field, and they have their parallel light field. All these circles here are the different angles that the capsules, those radial body capsules, are actually positioned at. In order to be able to go through a gate, a base 12 gate, you would have to fully release all the seals, at least for a moment, so that whole thing would wind up into one little ball of light inside of a Merkaba field, and then it would unwind on the other side, and it would, again, have its parallel double, except when you go into the inner echo worlds, you and your double are actually the same person. You're in the same body. The two bodies, a particle and antiparticle, actually come together in a form of stasis that gives a more permanent and more a stronger body form than what we have here. But these, on the physical, personal level, this is what working with the Vecca and Eka codes are opening for you, is those seals that would release all these little circles that are going all over these radial bodies here, and there's, those, remember the seven higher and lower heaven things where every time you see a Cathara grid you have 3 bubbles there, and then 1 here, and then 3 here, and then that shares that one, so that's 7. And so there's 14, technically. There would be 14 radial bodies that would be blended together into one, the 15th, which is the one that you can go through with. All right. Now, this has to do with your shields, because all of this, including the Vecca codes, and something called the nodes, are in the structure of your Maharic shield, that thing that we activate below our feet. That holds, it's like a mandala, like I said before, with all sorts of different configurations of frequency that are lined up in different geometrical forms and that kind of thing. So I'll show you where these guys fit in a minute into your shield, and also where the nodes are. And we'll start to talk about what the nodes are briefly, so you get an idea of what the living energy that we're playing with. All right, I'll do this real quick. All right, now in your shields, there's the pattern for this that is actually stored in your shield, the mathematical program that we talked about for the tribal shield. That's your 1728 simultaneous selves. All right, they're all encoded in your Maharic shield. They correspond with the DNA template that we talked about before. Now there's something we call nodes, tangents, logi, and atmi. And this little bit down here that I just scribbled on there, I'll talk about what they are in a minute. It says the Maharic shield holds, remember our Cathara grid that holds the core programs for our DNA? It holds the Cathara grid programs, the DNA programs, this tribal shield programs, in the form of nodes, tangents, logi, and atmi, and lock codes within the shield. Now, what are these things? There is the form of the consciousness of the rays. Now, if we remember when we were up at the top of the stairway to heaven, all of this is created not by somebody over here that's conscious making energy out of something else and creating structure. It's the consciousness itself that serves as the energy of which the structure is created. That means all of the structures we're working with, all of the energy we're working with, is fully alive and conscious and represents a part of the consciousness of God. That means it has its own ability to interact with other energy. It has its ability to, in its own way, think. When we're running a frequency in our bodies, we're running an identity in our bodies. Now, it's a part of our own identity, because we have parts of our own identity all the way up that stairway that we've left behind. The nodus is the name that is used to represent the consciousness field of a full dimensional frequency band or a full ray. So the consciousness of the rays are called the nodus. The body form that consciousness takes, which is a scalar standing waveform, is called a node. So a node is the body form, the waveform, that the nodus consciousness, which is the living God consciousness of that particular dimensionalized ray of the 15 rays, is taking. So you have nodes. Now, you have something called tangents. These represent the consciousness of the sub-frequency bands within each dimensional band. Remember, we have one dimensional band has 12 sub-frequency bands in it. That means one nodus consciousness has 12 tangents consciousness within it. All right? So this is living structure we're talking about. When we talk about the fire letters, we're talking about living structures of energy and identity that have lots of information to share with you once you realize you can communicate with them. Your shield is you as an avatar, but it holds vast amounts of knowledge, conscious living knowledge. It's the living memory matrix of what you are. It's not memory that something happened before and now it's just dead memory like a picture. It literally holds the consciousness and the information of that entire ray. Now, yeah, the rays equals the one-dimensional band equals one ray, and that equals one nodus consciousness. And within the one nodus consciousness, there are 12, or one ray. There's 12 subfrequency bands, so there would be 12 tangents in one notice. You just see it's a way of looking at it's a way of further understanding. When we talk about a dimension, it's also a person, all right? In the universal unified field, each dimension, the whole spectrum of it, equals the notice consciousness, not just the part that's in you, but the part that literally forms that dimension in the universal matrix. So same with the sub-frequency bands. So these are like universal consciousness that we're working with and that we're composed of. We're literally made of these pieces of consciousness that interact with each other. We go, one node equals one node is the body form, the wave form that the notice consciousness holds. The notice consciousness is the consciousness of the frequency band array. It is also the consciousness of one fire letter sequence, or a group of 12 fire letters, or the consciousness of one DNA strand, which equals 12 chromosome blueprints. The blueprints, literally, the chemicals that our DNA is made out of, they're alive. These are the carriers of the consciousness of the nodes and the tangents, the notice and the tangents. Now when we get to tangents, one tangent equals one is the body form, the tangent is the body form, or the little wave form inside of the bigger waveform of the node. That is the tangent consciousness, or the consciousness of the unified field of one sub-frequency band equals one fire letter. So one tangent is one fire letter. One tangent consciousness is the living reality of one fire letter. And there are 12 fire letters within each node. So this is where the terms of fire letters and all those things and scalar wave patterns and these little things in your shield, those little things in your shield, those scalar waves that we're lighting up, what we're doing is turning on the consciousness of the rays progressively in our shields. And it helps to understand this because when we're working with these energies, if we think of them in terms of, just kind of like energy to play with, we're missing a whole ability to have a relationship. What it comes down to is everything before your eyes and everything you can't see yet is living, alive, conscious, and a direct expression of God. If you want to touch God, reach out your hand. Feel the air. Try it. Think of it in a new way. What is this air? This is the form of the consciousness of God. Now take the same hand, put it here. This thing you know is your face. You are touching part of the consciousness of God. It's that close, it's that real, and it's that here. The notice consciousness is the consciousness of each ray with this little tangent consciousness in it. And they break down even further. You get the next breakdown would be the logi level, and the next breakdown would be the atmi level, where you're getting into the consciousness that makes up the parts of atoms and things. But it is all a living consciousness field. The next time you feel scared or upset about something or overwhelmed by something, remember, reach out your hand and touch God. And then take your hand back and lean into that space and let yourself be embraced by God. Feel the air around you hold you and realize that air is conscious. It is the consciousness of God around you. You can never ever be separate from it. Even in a vacuum, the vacuum space is still God. God doesn't require oxygen to be. Everything is the consciousness of these waveforms that everything is manifest on. It's very hard to be frightened of anything if you get that. If you can really get that simple little thing. Where is God? I have to go look inside me, look down my shirt. Can I find him in there somewhere? No. You can reach here. You can touch here. It is here around you. And if you can let your mental body remember that when you're in times of stress or anything, you can immediately calm yourself down as if God literally came and put arms around you and said, you are safe. You are a child of my bosom. You cannot be separate from me. If you can learn to feel the sensation of that little exercise and realize you're touching the consciousness of the nodes, the notice consciousness, the tangent consciousness, the logos, the atmos, and that's what you're made of too. And that's what your shields are made of. So when we work with the symbols, we are speaking the language, the God languages, the language that the notice understand. When we speak a symbol by running a symbol code down into our bodies, into our shields, it is the language. The notice can understand what we call English or Spanish or whatever our outside languages are, but they're true and whole languages, or the inner languages, the languages of vibration. So when we begin to speak the language of the gods, the pieces of God that are all around us and that make us up, we begin to have a direct and immediate relationship with God. And that opens up in different ways for everyone. But I didn't want, with all the technical things we've learned in this workshop, I didn't want you to go away without the understanding that every bit of this technical stuff is about the emotional, touchy-feely, cuddly God stuff that spirituality is about too. All of that is here, and it's in it. And if you can hold that, to realize those two parts, the technical aspects of how the things work, but the loving consciousness, the wisdom that is around you and with you and inside of you always. We're going to be taken eventually, probably, I don't know which workshop, I think it might be the Greece one, where they're going to teach us how. And, I didn't know where the exercises fit that they used to help me wake up a long time ago. But there were some fascinating meditations that were done by calling on the entity of the flame. Now, when you find out what your capstone node is, what frequencies you are primarily working with, that is what consciousness you are primarily working with right now. They taught me to actually bring the frequency in, and I would feel like the flame around me, and they had trained me, they said, and call upon the entity of the flame and ask it whatever it is you would like to know, and it will reveal to you its knowledge. Now, sometimes you'll hear it in hearing, sometimes you'll get a visual. Most often, you will get direct cognition. It's like a frequency you can just feel move through you. If there's an answer you need to something, you can actually visualize yourself within an akasha-shaped flame of your capstone color. All right. Now, if you do your Manu test now, your test now, and you find that you're blue flame Manu, so you go into the blue flame. If you find you're running more Mane, you'd go into the pale yellow flame. If you're finding you're running more Ire, you'd go into the pale violet flame, or it's actually pale pink, magenta. You may find 2 weeks or 2 months from now, if you retest just to see where it happens, you might find your affiliation is different. So then you would go into that. But you literally just visualize yourself in the space after you run once you're on Technique 8, you just run the quick version. It's kind of like the thing higher than the Maharic seal. For now, you'd run like the Akasha Quick Seal and go into the visualization, just seeing yourself sitting inside the flame. Feel that air around you. Try to touch. You don't have to put your hand out, but you can. Touch the flame around you. And then realize it's a living being that is a part of you. It is what you look like on that particular density level when that density level visits this density level. You are surrounded by yourself now in its highest space that it is running, like the frequencies are running at this point. Ask it questions. Sometimes you won't get any answer. Sometimes what needs to be done first is a strong connection being made. So you literally just go in and breathe the color of the flame and feel it spread through you. And realize that's a part of you you're reclaiming. And when you do that, your shields lighten up all over the place. You're bringing more and more of that frequency in. I remember going into meditations where I would just find myself, I'd start where I'd be aware of myself sitting on the chair and go into the flame space. And for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, that I would be aware of both parts. And sometimes, things are distracting. You're trying to calm your mind down, stick that in the file cabinet, leave me alone. I'm trying to concentrate. I'm in a flame. That kind of stuff where you're having the mind chatter and stuff. But after a while, the mind chatter stopped. And then I found I got really still, and I would be sitting. I'd still be aware of the self on the chair and the self in the flame. But huge amounts of time would go by. And it seemed like I was just there for 5 minutes, and I'd look at it, it was 3 hours later. Oh my God. I've been in this absolute still point. It was like being in hyperspace, the most peaceful place. And I'd be so energized when I got back out. Then I found, as I continued with these type of meditations, that I got into the flame and completely forgot about myself in the body. And a couple times I really wondered if the body was actually still there. If I had a video camera going in the room, was it even still there? Because there were a few times where I felt this little shift that I recognized from other places that was like, oh yeah, coming back into manifestation, almost like, okay, back in, right? These are the beginnings of being able to get out. First you get your mind out, then you get your emotional body out, your D2 body, then you get your physical body out. So understanding your capstone node is important so you can run the frequencies of the flame and talk to them. These are your friends. These are yourself up there. Call upon the entity of the flame. And that's how it was worded to me. So, so I used to go, I was always working with the blue flame. And I said, call upon the entity of the blue flame. I'd sit and I'd call upon the entity of the blue flame, not realizing it was even myself at that point. I wasn't awake enough to have all the technicals down. I thought it was like, okay, I felt like family. I knew it wasn't something, I was already real sensitive to things that said they were one thing but acted in another way. It was a very peaceful flame, felt very benign. So even when I didn't know what it meant and didn't realize it was a part of my own consciousness, my own, but at a, at like a rishi level, it was still the most peaceful feeling. And it was call upon the entity of the whatever color flame it is, And that's a little exercise. We won't have time to do it here, but you can do it at home. It's real simple. There's no like have to do step 1, step 2. It's not one of these real technical ones. Just get your shields up. If you're doing Akasha quick seal, do Akasha quick seal. Visualize the flame. Slow the breathing and visualize the flame. And try to get yourself first feeling the flame around your body, and then trying to really just focus a visual in your mind as if you're sitting in it here. And get to the point where, if you work with it, where you actually lose track of this body and feel like you're completely in there, and just all sorts of stuff comes. Sometimes people come and visit you in the flame, and like sometimes scenarios will be shown to you in the flame to help work out conflicts with people here or issues, or sometimes books will appear mysteriously hanging in the air in the visualization, and you'll be able to read them while you're in the flame. And you can come back and solve problems here, or write books, or draw pictures. I mean, it's really cool what you can do once you get into this space. And it's a really simple exercise. Just remember, get into the flame. What was my capstone? That's the color. Okay. It's really simple. That's one of the reasons why they wanted you to take the test, so you could identify at least what your flame affiliation is right now, the mutable flame affiliation. Later, these are going to be intensified, where we get the core, what our core program is, where we find out which flame family we are bearing the most codes of, which would be, once we turn on our whole shield, that would be the primary frequency that's running. But for now, this is a lot to work with, and it's fun. So anyway, the stuff with the nodes and the tangents and the logi and the atmi, if you can understand that just they're the body forms of the consciousness called the nodus, tangents, logis, and atmas, that are, again, the consciousness of the frequency bands, sub-frequency bands, and what we call kilans, and smaller things, which are rions and aparthi, that are smaller. And these all make up the DNA blueprints, chromosome blueprints, down to gene blueprints. So you don't have to know all this technical stuff. Technically, the technicals are this: 12 DNA strands equals 12 dimensions arrays, 12 fire letter sequences, 12 nodus, 12 nodes equals 144 chromosome blueprints, 144 sub-frequency bands, 144 fire letters or kilans, 144 tangents consciousness with 144 tangents bodies, right? Equals 1,728 gene sequences, 1,728 vector codes incarnates in time, 1,728 kilana, 1,728 logos consciousness, 1,728 logi body forms, little waveforms. All right, so we're talking about the tangible structure of your shields, but realizing that that structure is tangibly conscious as well. And it's a part of your identity that actually wears that body form of that wave. All right, now we go from there. We look at the shield structure, I think, next. Yeah. Now, this is showing us, again, the Maharic shield template. All right. Now these aren't numbered the way they actually appear in the shield, but this is transposed with the DNA strands. So, remember that little diagram we used for the DNA? Well, that's right here at the center. Okay, strand 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way around. The nodes hold the whole program for each of the strands. Remember, the nodes are the little body forms, the little wave forms that hold the nodus consciousness. Within each of the nodes, we'll see that, it's like within each of these, each one would have its own tangents, and then its own logi with the nose, its own atmi with the nose. But each one of the nodes corresponds to the full programming of one of the strands, one of the Kathara centers, one of the chakras, all of that. It's all connected. And these are the living consciousness that move through, that like node 1 consciousness, the nodus of dimension 1, would run through your base chakra and your first DNA strand and your first Kathara center. So that's how these plug in to the other things that we've learned about structure. What this is showing is where the Metatronic heart implants are stationed within the DNA. All right, strand 8, strand 11, strand 2, and strand 5. It's upside down. Also, we have the what are they called? The Avalon seal, which is part of this beast mechanism, that's in strand 12. And over here in strand 7, we've got, it's actually in the fire code, but it affects strand 7 and 6. We've got the 666, the Metatronic seed atom. Now, what this means is because the templates for these strands are actually held in the nodes, it means that the nodes themselves are holding the implants. And what that means, because nodes are the body forms that the nodus consciousness can use, that the frequency fields of the black hole systems, they are also consciousness. They are twisted consciousness that's gone into mathematical reversal, but they are living consciousness fields as well. So what these implants mean to our nodes and to our shields and to ourselves is that the consciousness from the black hole systems, literally their twisted nodus consciousness, can push its way through into our templates. That's how body possession takes place. That's what we're learning to heal and clear when we use the flame body activations. So I just wanted you to see how the implants fit in with that. Now, we can go to the next one, please. Yes. Okay, that's a 4. It's just naming the hearts. 4th heart, it's the heart of Anubis. They have different names, and we'll talk about the names a little bit this evening when we go into, actually it won't be this evening, it'll be after break. We're going to have one break after we get done with all this part before we go into the heavy stuff that's going to take us up to the end, which is understanding the big picture as far as wormwood and all of that kind of stuff. But anyway, this is a number 4 for anybody that wants to know. This is a number 3, this is a number 2, and I forgot the number 1. That's number 1, but it goes with the words that are here. Okay, and you have these, I believe, in your books. I think these are in the books. Oh, you have them here, you mean? Yeah, I added these just to show which ones they're corresponding to. Yeah. Yeah, you could add those in. This one, that's a little eye. All right. Yeah, that, where am I? The eye of Metatron seal. That's the Avalon seal. This one, it's the Metatronic eye. That's like the control seal that allows the whole beast mechanism to actually function. And that little thing is the 666 atom. Huh? Yeah, they're listed up here too. All right, so like here, what this means is in nodus 5, in strand 5, you have black heart implant number 3, the 3rd black heart implant. And they each have different names that are listed up there, and they each are at a different frequency. You know, this is why we're literally implanted all the way up through into our avatar bodies. So this is not just our problem down here, but it's a long problem we've all been working a very long time to fix. And this is the time we fix it, which is exciting. So it may seem like a scary time, but it's actually a time of finally we get to exhale. It's like hold your breath for the last 5 million years or so until you could finally know you could heal yourself. Finally, we've got it. This is the joy of the times. They may be a little weird and a little wacky and a little rocky here and there, but this is the healing that both sides have been waiting for. They're so sick of us, they really just wish we'd go off into our own black hole and leave them alone. They will be glad too. They've chosen their evolution. They'll have evolution for a while when they fall. They want that. That's their choice. They made the choice. They want us to go away and leave them alone. And this is what's going to happen. We, on the human end and the indigo end and the guardian race end that want to work the Christos imprint, we want to stop being picked on and stop being hurt and harmed and tempted, victimized. We have to play these victim-victimizer games. So we're actually in the middle of the end of the conflict and the hurting. So it's a good time. Now, what this one shows you, they threw a lot on this morning on this one. Yeah. Okay, where am I going to start with this one? All right, ignore the green and blue stuff for a minute. And again, we have our 12 nodes, right? Now, the numbering that was on the other chart was just to show you that there were 12. This is to show you the actual, in your shield that pops up below your feet, the actual number, the sequence of numbers. Now, what they are is in the configuration of that thing called the ruche. Remember the ruche that's in the center of the akasha shape? It's that little thing down here with the funny little triangles on a cross. That That's the pattern of the anchoring. If you go all the way up to the top of the stairway to heaven, the anchoring pattern of the 12 Ruche pillars, the original pillars from Source. So literally our templates are built upon those coatings and are meant to be able to, when necessary, anchor them. Now, our shields, this little thing in here that's hard to see that I put in this morning, is your body, as if somebody's looking down at you from an airplane, okay? Standing on your Maharic shield, right? When you, the way the shields are mathematically configured is the 6th position is directly in front of you, the 12 is directly in back, the 3 is at your left, and the 9 is at your right, okay? Left hand, right hand, rear, and front. So you're facing your 6th notice would be in your shield here, and that's also the template for your 6th strand. So this is showing you the orientation that, wow, this is stuff like in that shield that activates below my feet. This is what I'm looking at. So you start to know where what lives, just where the pieces fit. When you're running capstones and things, now these would be the capstones, all right? The 10, 11, and 12. The 10 is the carrier, the pre-matter template for the Ire, the 11 is for the Mane, and the 12 is for the Manu. So when you are working with the capstone frequencies, you're actually activating those pieces of your shield that are back there behind you. And let's see. Okay, and again, here's what we already really discussed, was the flame, like if you find that you're blue flame, which would be, okay, if you're a 12, if you end up as the Manu as your primary current, that implies that notice 12 is the primary Christian current that you're working with right now. That implies when you go up to the primal light fields that you're working with the notice consciousness of D13. Because 12 and 13 go together, 10 and 15 go together, and 11 and 14 go together. So these would be your Rishik capstones in the primal light fields, the Rishi families that you're from and working with, and these would be the Christos capstones, or the Christos Founders Race collectives that you're working with. And there are different ways to use those frequencies as we're just beginning to learn. Now, somebody say something? Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to show you too where all the pieces fit again. Remember we had those Vecca codes? Okay, Veccas and Ekkas that open the seals between the radio bodies. This is where they would be stationed in the shields, in your shields, literally, down here. So you get an idea of what you're activating where. So if you start getting funny little bursts of energy here and there, this little diagram will help you have an idea of, oh, that's coming from like directly in front of me. Ooh, I just got a burst of energy there. I just activated something here. That means you just did something with your 6th strand, first of all. Because remember, the 6th notice goes with the 6th strand, right? So it's giving you information about, where you can really start to get sensitive to what's activating in your field. And there's also going to be ways to use these. Now, once we know our capstone nodes, we can use the tones and the color frequencies to consciously work on activating them. The flame body exercise that I talked about before is one of the fastest and easiest to do, because as soon as you put yourself in that visualization space and just start breathing the flame energy, you're actually bringing the frequencies through the corresponding nodes. So you're actually activating the template every time you do it. And the more you activate it, the more it'll stay on, and the more frequency will come in. Let's see. Now, for again, we went, went over the chants already, like the tones. These can be used as mantras. Not like, you can do, if you can't remember anything else at a particular time and you just want to activate your capstone, you would use the tone sequence that goes with it. That's, if you go back to that chart that had the 2 Kathara grids that told you all the names and the tones of each one of the little Kathara centers, that's where these tones come from. If you're blue, if you're a blue flamer, that means you're working with the Ma'a Ki energy, which is the D12, D13 energy, right? Because Ma'a is the D12 sound tone, and Ki is the D13 frequency. Ki Rashe, the primal light fields, all right? So Ma'a Ki is the blue. The Hara Ra would be the D10 and the D14. No, not D10. D11 and D14. And this would be the D10 and the D15. Okay? Ta'ashe, Hara Ra, Ma'a Ki. Just by saying those tones over and over to yourself. Out loud is good first until they start to really take. Then you can just do them silently in your head. And every time you do, you're running those frequencies. If you're finding yourself in like a traffic jam and getting really bugged, or in something that's starting to upset you for whatever reason, if you can remember to just Imagine your flame around you, even if you don't have time to remember. How do I do one of those seal things again? Just do the mantra in your head, and it will begin to bring those frequencies in, which will imply, if you're bringing your capstone frequencies in, it will also bring in the sub-frequencies of them all the way through the template. So in effect, it's another quick way to amplify your Maharic seal and your flame body. So there's a lot more technologies we'll learn with this. This is just the beginning of the science of the shields, but it's enough to work with that with the flame body activations and the knowledge that we're learning here, we can have a good time activating and getting ourselves safe and finding out who we really are, because that's what it's about. We all came in here at fetal integration and fell asleep. Our DNA shut the rest of us out of body, and we don't remember who we are, where we came from, why we're here in the first place. That starts to change. It doesn't change overnight, but piece by piece, little frequency by frequency, little Atmi consciousness or Atmas consciousness, little Logish consciousness, and eventually little bigger Nodus consciousness comes to you and comes in you, and you bring back that part of yourself to yourself. And that's what brings back your cellular memory, your knowledge, the truth of your history, the truth of who you are, and that gives you control, conscious control over who you want to evolve to become. And that's what it's all about. That's the joy. We were created as free beings, that we're meant to be able to joyfully experience the manifestation experience as masters and help others to do the same. This is the beginning of reclaiming our heritage. So I just wanted you to understand basically where those pieces fit. Now, what they would like us to do, we're going to do Technique 7, because that's the last in the activations that we can do here, because you need 4 to 6 weeks before you can work with Technique 8 and 13 and 14. All right, you could play with 15. It's in the book. Actually, it's a contact one. But as far as the other healing ones, we can only go up to their flame activation and shadow healing at the same time. We can only go up to 7. We're going to do 7, but before we do it, we're going to do something. That's why they gave us this stuff on the tones and stuff this morning. We're going to do this right before Az starts reading the technique to you. Now, is there anybody that doesn't know from the test which flame they're running? Okay.
I have a question about, you said if 2 of them were the same. I didn't follow what you said.
Okay, if 2 scores come out the same and one of them's the Manu, use that one. All right. If the 2 come out the same on the with the Ire and the Mane, use the Manu. All right, because that's balance. So that means you can you can actually go blue if you're totally balanced in the 2.
But that's if those are the highest scores, right?
Yeah, the highest score is what will tell you what flame affiliation, what capstone you're running right now. Yeah.
So I have the same in the Manu and the Mane, so
you would run Manu. Yeah, Manu is the strongest one. All right, so if you have like you're totally equal in Manu plus something else, just use the Manu. And if you're totally at the same score, which I don't even know if it can happen, if you're totally at the same score between Ire and Mane, that implies you can run the Manu, at least now, because you're in balance right now with those 2 forces. All right, so does that solve any questions? So if we say, okay, call on your capstone and visualize yourself inside of the flame that goes with it. Remember, there's only 3 flames. You're either a blue, a violet, or a gold. And that means, color-wise, the blue is a pale turquoise color. All right? It's not like, navy blue or cobalt blue. It's pale turquoise. The gold is pale yellow. And the violet is actually pale pink. It's a pale magenta. All right? So the violet flame is a pale magenta. And you would simply visualize yourself in that field, and then the tones that go with whichever one you are, you could say it to yourself. You could do it out loud. All right, Ma, I was saying, yeah, do like just 6 rounds, because they're short, Ma'aki, 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 real fast. And now everybody's going to be doing different ones. So like, just try to remember yours so you don't fall into your neighbors. Yeah. It ought to be interesting to stand outside and listen and see which one sounds the loudest, because that'll give us an idea of what the whole group, what the group is running as the primary frequency right now. Hello? Yeah, that's true. That would be interesting to see if you could tell by the tones, and then find out later, how many, if we have time to do, to find out how many of who got what, right? All right, so we'll do that, and from there, right after, this is what they're asking you to do. You're basically going to run this one. I'm just explaining it. Then go right into Technique 7. So we'll start this with the lights down, okay, for that technique. Now, the way they want to run it is because of the frequencies that are going to be activating. There's going to be a break between now and 7:30-ish, 8 o'clock when we're done, all right? They want to do the break right after this is done, so these frequencies can run. It's a short break, about 15 minutes, then we're coming back, and that's when we're getting into the heavy stuff, and you find out about wormwood, and I have some really interesting graphs to show you to help explain some of that wacky stuff I was talking about wormwood coming in and it getting blown up and arcs coming down and all that stuff. All right? Well, that comes in the graphs in the last part. Somebody just asked, what about Sedona, the work we did out there? They wouldn't tell us. Well, they told us what we were doing, but they couldn't tell us what it was connected to as far as the bigger thing yet until we got out of there for our own safety. So we were allowed in, though, even though the grids are controlled by the other side because they're desperate. Alrighty. Now, be forewarned, this Technique 7 is, I believe, one of the longest, if not the longest. But, thankfully, you don't have to do it all the time. You get the activation once here. You can play with them a little if you want to at home, but you've got the activation. So it's worth suffering through once. If you can't stay awake, feel free to lay on the floor and fall asleep. At least your body and the rest of you are still getting it. Your shield will still pick it up. Your consciousness will still absorb it, even if you don't remember. Oh, and as I always say, anybody that doesn't want the activation, you can leave the room when they're this powerful, actually. Just, you could go have a break if you don't want to be there. Okay. I didn't think anybody would feel that way, but just in case. Because we never make people do anything, you know, like you don't have to get any of these activations. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You can say that.
There you go, we need.
Pretty fast. How are we doing on time? Not bad. I'm actually 15 minutes ahead of where I thought I'd be. That's wonderful. So you're going to get them, okay, remember to tell them to go into their flame bodies.
I won't forget.
Okay, the visual first, then the tonics. I love you. But it's like, wait till we get to go play with flame bodies.
Good behavior, sir.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it there for a second, sir.
I shall be right back. You got a little angel. Where'd that come from?
I don't know, there's another present in the blue box down there as well.
Oh, I guess I'll stick it there. There's somebody.
Yeah. I'll turn the overhead light out before we begin the technique, but I've left it on so that those of you that need to refer to your newfound capstone node tone, you can just read it off the screen up here. I'll turn it off as soon as it's finished. Okay? So, if you would like to get yourselves comfortable. Now remember, what we're going to do first is you're going to visualize putting your mental identity into the flame that corresponds with your capstone node. The blue, the pale yellow, or the very pale violet pink. Okay? And then we're going to repeat the tone that belongs to your family, your founder's family line. All right, so if you're a blue, you'll do the Ma key. If you're gold, you do the Ha-ra, and if you're violet pink, you'll do the Ta-she. Okay? You do it 6 times, and Ma's already said he wants you to do it out loud. So you'll just spend not more than a minute just getting your intention or your imagination in the place. Your mental identity, your presence, your consciousness is going to be put into, by you, into the flame that corresponds to the color that you're associated with. Blue, very pale yellow, or a pale pinky violet. Okay, now assuming you're all comfortably inside of your flame, if we can all do more or less synchronized the 6 repeats of the tone that your flame color is associated with, okay? After 3. 1, 2, 3. Ma-ki, We'll do technique 7, awakening the flame of Amareya. Azurite crystal and density 2 soul body Amareya flame activation, which is the third level of the Amareya flame activation sequence. The purpose of technique 7 is to activate the density 2 silver sanctum and Amareya flame for formation of the transharmonic Amareya flame Akasha vehicle. Activation of the Amareya flame opens the Manu window surrounding the density 1 and density 2 hover bodies, which will begin activation of the density 1 and density 2 Manu windows in the nucleus of every atom in the body and soul body. And begin as usual by slowing your breathing a little. And as you moderate your breathing rate, begin to imagine the place within the center of your brain where the small, dimly lit circular room with a descending, spiraling staircase resides. Just slow your breathing and imagine or see or intend from the center point of your brain the dimly lit circular room with its descending staircase. Bring as much focus of your mental attention as you can manage into the small, dimly lit circular room at the center of the brain. Presently it's dimly lit. And we want you to begin to feel the sensations of being within the circular room until your inner eyes adjust to the dim light. So again, feel for the sensations, if any, around your physical body. Allow yourself to notice what the temperature of the air is as it touches your skin. Is it cool or warm, hot, cold? Is it comfortable or not? Try to notice if there are any sounds in this space, and whether you can begin to discern any objects, any hint of color, any hint of light anywhere. From within the brain center, imagine yourself standing within the inner circular room and visualize or intend that your body in this room turns to the right from the position in which it was standing. After turning to the right, imagine now that a spiral staircase appears before you. The staircase ascends upwards and has 36 steps. Imagine that the circular room is physically real, and that your physical body really is standing within it. From this point of focus, sense with your physical and mental bodies the entrance to the ascending spiral staircase. If the spiral staircase were to magically open up now, emerging from your physical body and into the room, it would always appear directly to the right of your physical body. Now sense the area to the right of your physical body from which the staircase would emerge. This area represents the natural density 2 departure point for all beings carrying the human or indigo divine blueprint template. If at first you are unable to sense the density 2 departure point, simply imagine that it's there, opening and ascending upward to the right side of the physical body. Now, once you have located or imagined the density 2 departure point, move the focus of your mental attention to this area of your body, the area that accesses the departure point within the physical body, and imagine that your awareness is now poised at the bottom stair. The staircase extends upward from your density 2 departure point into an area that resembles a golden tunnel. Now sense the location of the staircase handrail and imagine yourself reaching out to grasp it with your right hand, physically with your right hand. Keep your palms resting in your lap, but sense the feeling of the handrail within the palm of your physical right hand and physically grasp the invisible handrail. Using the imagined sensation of the handrail in your right palm as your guide, imagine now that your mental awareness begins to slowly walk up the dimly lit stairway towards the golden corridor, the golden tunnel. Count each of the steps you take as you slowly ascend. Everyone will have at least 36 steps. The 36th step is the top step that leads directly into the density 2 D6.5 indigo violet awakening room, which is the Eka Godseed center point, the azurite crystal and inner temple of Camelotia. Now imagine that you are standing on the 36th step, the top step, and release the handrail while allowing your hand to relax in your lap. You may not yet experience any or much visual sensory data as you enter the indigo violet awakening room. But imagine that you are stepping from the 36th step to the aquamarine and amethyst tile floor of the awakening room, whilst imagining the awakening room as a circular aquamarine and amethyst tiled cave that is brightly lit with undulating rays of gold, indigo, and violet light. In the center of the awakening room is an ancient yellow gold chalice, often called the Holy Grail, that rises up from the floor to the height of about 4 feet. Imagine now that you are slowly walking forward with one hand extended, to feel your way along through the blinding light rays, as if moving through the light field of a sun. Continue to sense that you are walking forward in the awakening room until your extended hand touches the raised golden chalice in front of you. When you reach the golden chalice, imagine that you are reaching forward to retrieve something that sits inside the upper bowl of the golden chalice itself. Imagine now that you are actually reaching down into the upper bowl of the golden chalice, searching with your fingers to locate the small object awaiting your retrieval. The object is a very deep azure blue azurite crystal, spherical in form, about the size of a large marble, with a sparkling but rough textured surface covered in minute azurite crystal cluster points. The azurite crystal is the door key to your density 2 etheric soul body. Now imagine that you're picking up the azurite crystal in your right hand, and model this hand gesture with your physical right hand as it rests in your lap. Pick up the azurite crystal in your right hand. Use your physical hand now as it rests in your lap. Hold it and sense the size, the weight, the texture, and the temperature of the azurite crystal with your physical hand, as if the invisible object were really there. Continue to feel the crystal. In a moment we're going to inhale pale silver Maharic current up from Earth's core, into your body through your central vertical current, all the way up to the Azure point in chakra 8 at the base of the thymus. Now inhale Maharic frequency up from Earth's core, all the way up to the Azure point, chakra 8. And then exhale the frequency from the Azure down your right arm, into your palm, and into the Azurite crystal. Now take 3 more exact same inhale-exhale breaths, each time focusing on energizing and activating the Azurite crystal in your palm. At the end of the last exhale, imagine that the Azurite crystal is glowing and pulsing with an aura of pale silver gold light. You may sense the weight of the crystal in your palm growing less heavy, but you also may sense nothing at this time. But even so, the Azurite crystal is now activated. Now, move your physical right hand with the Azurite crystal in it to the Azure point. This is at the thymus. Cup your hand over the crystal at the Azure point. Inhale a Maharic breath up to the Azure, and exhale the breath down your right arm, into your palm, and through the Azurite crystal. As the Maharic frequency carries, there is a mild sensation, a mild buzzing in the Azure as the data key stored in the Azurite crystal moves into the corresponding lock 6 on density 2 etheric soul body door. If you do not feel the buzzing presently, send up to 3 more inhale-exhale Maharic breaths through the Azurite crystal in the palm of your hand to amplify the Maharic charge that will release the data key. As the data key releases, imagine that your body absorbs the entire azurite crystal, removing it from your palm and transferring the crystal into the etheric lock 6 at the azure. Allow your right hand to return to your lap and rest gently there, while shifting your mental focus to the physical azure where the crystal has entered. Imagine now that you can sense the weight and gentle buzzing of the azurite crystal within your physical body in the azure. The crystal is now rotating slowly and pulsing in a gentle rhythm. On every pulsation, releasing a pale silver gold azure blue azurite wave field of frequency rays that contain the natural activation code mathematical program for your personal density 2 etheric soul body. We'll spend a few seconds whilst you try to become aware of each gentle pulse of the subtle azurite wave field as it emanates from the azure at the thymus and spreads outward in all directions through every atom in your body, giving your D2 etheric soul body field its ancient wake-up call. Relax and breathe slowly for a few moments to get in touch with the presence of the pulsing azurite waves. The azurite waves are there even if you cannot yet sense their presence. And your D4 astral atomic etheric body does sense them and will respond accordingly. Next, we will inhale Maharic current up to the azure, then exhale the current within the azure to form a tiny pale silver Maharic spark within the azure. Inhale Maharic frequency now up to the azure, then exhale the current within the azure to form a tiny pale silver Maharic spark. Now take 2 more inhale, exhale Maharic breaths to expand the Maharic spark within the azure to the size of a chicken's egg. At the same time, observe the sensation of the egg expanding into your azure. Now take a final Maharic breath, inhaling current directly into the Maharic egg, and then using a forceful exhale breath to burst the Maharic egg, while pushing the released rays of Maharic current throughout your entire body and outward in your auric field. Now we're going to use an activation breath in a second. And that involves a very slow, long inhale of Maharic current from the Earth's core into the azure. Deep, steady, fluid inhale. Draw the frequency into the azure, then hold this breath for a moment while focusing your mental attention on the azurite crystal in the azure. You will also exhale slowly. So begin the inhale now, slow and steady. And when you reach the top of the in-breath, just hold, focusing mental attention on the azurite crystal in the azure, and then exhale slowly, slowly, using the exhale breath to push more current into the crystal, returning to regular and uncontrolled breathing when you've finished. You'll be waiting for a very subtle pop sensation or a sense of expansion or warmth to occur within the azure as the azure lock seal releases, freeing the density 2 D4 atomic etheric body for merger with the activated density 1 silver sanctum eros flame. Whether you feel or whether you don't feel anything, The Azure passage extending between the density 1 and density 2 body Azure points is now opened, and the Azurite crystal is activated. The etheric soul body exists as a D4 E-ray plus Man-A primal current energy field within and surrounding every atom, which extends like a form-fitting, pale blue, violet, and gold energy spacesuit around the entire physical body. Relax, continue to breathe gently, with eyes closed, and imagine that the etheric soul body spacesuit, or density 2 body replica, imagine that you can see its pale blue, violet, and gold form sitting within your physical body in exactly the same position as your physical body is now. Once the Azure passage has been opened through release of the Azurite crystal of dimensional lock 6, the D6 mental body field opens into the density 2 radial body Eros field, causing the polarized D5, D7 Eros to depolarize to a D12 Manu Rayon field. The density 2 body is thus prepared to receive the frequencies of the fully activated Azurite crystal and the density 2 Amareya flame Akasha body, or transharmonic Amareya flame body. So relax and breathe slowly while focusing the mental body attention on the Azure point in the physical body. Imagine once more your consciousness as a spark of pale silver Maharic light placed within the Azurite crystal at the central pale silver Amareya egg throne of power, which is within the Azurite flame, which itself is inside of the Azurite crystal sphere. With your intention tightly focused in the Amareya egg at the Azure, give the mental command just inside of your head, don't make a sound. Shift now to the density 2 etheric soul body vehicle while imagining that your etheric soul body moves out to the right of your density 1 physical body with the silver spark of your consciousness placed within the brain center at the pineal gland of the density 2 etheric soul body. So with your attention focused in the Amareya egg at the Azure, give the mental command, shift now. Imagine your etheric soul body moving out to the right of your density 1 physical body with the silver spark of your consciousness placed at the brain center of the density 2 etheric soul body. Using the vertical breathing rhythm of running the Maharic current within your physical body, you will move the silver spark within the density 2 etheric soul body. And we will do this by inhaling Maharic current up from the earth core into the Azure. In one breathing motion, we'll exhale the Maharic current into the Azurite crystal at the Azure, using the exhale breath to direct the Azurite crystal horizontally to the right, while at the same time imagining the Azurite crystal moves with the breath into the Azure cord and into the density 2 etheric soul body. So, inhale Maharic current up from earth core into the Azure. Smooth motion, straight into the exhale. Maharic current into the crystal at the Azure. Use the breath to direct the Azurite crystal horizontally out to the right, while imagining that the Azurite crystal moves with the breath into the Azure cord and into the density 2 etheric soul body. And with that you will see, or you can imagine, that the deep azure blue Azurite crystal is now nestling comfortably within the as-array point of the etheric soul body. And move your attention from the as-array point of the etheric soul body to the pale silver spark at the pineal gland of the etheric soul body. Inhale in the physical body, and then on the exhale forcefully imagining that the silver spark rides the breath current, moving rapidly down from the etheric pineal into the azurite crystal at the etheric soul body as-array point. Inhale. Exhale, forcefully imagine the silver spark rides the breath down from the etheric pineal into the azurite crystal at the etheric soul body as-array. When the silver spark intersects with the azurite crystal, a momentary flaring occurs as the crystal bursts into a small, deep azure blue Manu flame, about 2 3/4 inches high within the etheric body as-array. Imagine you can see the flame there. Deep azure blue Manu flame within the etheric body as-array, 2 3/4 inches high. Inhale, then exhale, while imagining that the deep azure blue Manu Amaraya flame spreads through every atom of the density 1 and density 2 etheric bodies, turning the pale blue, violet, and gold density 2 etheric soul body into a brilliant, glowing, shimmering, pale silver blue transharmonic etheric akasha body as the density 1 and density 2 silver sanctums unite. So inhale and exhale, imagining the deep azure blue Manu Amaraya flame spreading throughout every atom of the density 1 and density 2 etheric bodies, turning the pale blue, violet, and gold density 2 etheric soul body into a brilliant, glowing, shimmering, pale silver blue transharmonic etheric akasha body as the density 1 and 2 silver sanctums unite. In a moment we'll take another breath, another in-breath, and our attention will be based on the Amaraya Manu flame at the etheric soul body as-array point. Using the inhale breath, we'll draw the Amaraya flame through the as-array cord and into the physical body as-array point. We will then exhale forcefully, using the exhale breath to push the Amaraya flame down to the 13th chakra at Earth's core. And when the Amaraya flame enters the chakra seals of Earth's core, the Amaraya flame will momentarily flare, filling every atom in the physical and soul body with deep azure blue Amaraya divine blueprint frequency. So inhale. Use the breath to draw the Amaraya flame through the as-array cord and into the physical body. Exhale forcefully, using the breath to push the flame down to Earth's core. The flame flares down at Earth's core, filling every atom in the physical and soul body with deep azure blue Amaraya divine blueprint frequency. Try to sense the release of the Amaraya wave within the physical body as a gentle expansion of internal heat emerging from the as-array that moves simultaneously in all directions throughout the physical body. With your attention now focused on the Amaraya flame at Earth core, prepare to inhale deeply and simultaneously from 2 directions using the 2-point breathing of Amaraya activation techniques. You will inhale simultaneously density 2 indigo frequency down from the 14th chakra 3 feet above the head, while bringing pale silver Maharic current and the Amaraya flame upward from Earth core, bringing the currents of energy into union within the as-array point. Okay, when you're ready, 2-point breathing. Draw indigo frequency down from the 14th chakra 36 inches above your head, whilst drawing pale silver current and the Amaraya flame up from Earth's core, bringing them into union within the as-array. exhale the 2-point breath within the as array. And in your own time, complete 3 additional 2-point inhale-exhale breaths to activate the Amaraya flame within the as array. Each time exhaling the frequency into the as array. Now, while focusing your attention on the inside of the Amaraya flame at the as array, take a final 2-point inhale breath, just as you've been doing, and then exhale forcefully, using the exhale breath to rapidly expand the Amaraya flame from within the as array outward through the body until the Amaraya flame is fully expanded around the entire body and outward several feet into your auric field. So take a final 2-point inhale with your attention on the inside of the flame at the as array. Exhale forcefully, expanding the flame from within the as array. This forms the pale silver-blue 6-dimensional transharmonic akasha inner silver sanctum body capsule. Now direct your attention back to the etheric soul body, positioned to the right of your physical body. Inhale slowly and gently while drawing the etheric soul body horizontally back into the physical body. When the two bodies rapidly and fully align, the activated Amaraya flame transharmonic akasha capsule will momentarily flare as the Amaraya flame phase locks within both the density 1 and density 2 etheric and physical bodies. So inhale and draw the etheric soul body horizontally back into the physical. The transharmonic Akasha seal Amaraya flame and the azurite crystal are now fully activated. In your own time, gently bring a conscious focus back into your body fully, into the room. Take your time. And slowly, slowly, slowly come back into your body and open your eyes.
On the door, please, Jay. Thank you. See, my objective tonight is to wrap it up hopefully by 7:30, probably 8 o'clock. That's what we're hoping, because there's been a couple people said they have to leave, and they don't want to miss the important stuff at the end. So, what?
I just wanted to present this to you before you get going.
Oh.
You're about to leave.
Oh, thank you.
Signed by everybody.
Oh, thank you all. Thank you all very much. I got a card with me and Az on the front. Thank you. I love these. These are great. They're great reading. You know? I do. Thank you very much. Now, the information we're going to cover. We've learned the solution. Okay, yesterday and today, we finished the technologies and the activations in our bodies that will begin the process of the solution for us personally, but also for our contribution to the planetary solution, which is a contribution to the galactic solution and to the universal solution in this particular time matrix. Now we're going to look at the big picture a bit so we can see where the pieces of that fit. Now, there's tons of stuff already published on the history. That shows the history of the drama, the history of the conflicts, who's who, who's fighting with who, where'd they come from, where'd they start from, what is their problem, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of that in Voyagers Volume 2, 2nd edition. We began to release the history right after September 12th of 2000. We were beginning a tour just for the Cathar Healing Program, nothing confrontational, over in England. And we had to literally stop the workshops. There was like supposed to be a 5-week tour of workshops. We had to stop the workshops. They couldn't even tell us why. They said, you have to get back unsecured grids now. Cancel the workshops. I mean, it cost us a fortune to cancel. I mean, it costs a lot to run them. And we literally just had to drop everything and come back to the States where we were on at least temporarily secured grids, where they let us know what took place. There was an agreement broken on that day. The agreement had been made in 1992, November of 1992. It was called the Palladian-Syrian Agreements. It was a set of agreements that are tracked a bit in the Voyagers Volume 2 Second Edition book, but had to do with certain of the main black hole invader races that have the major control over the grids here that are fighting with the other ones. You had the Anunnaki groups that are fighting with the Draconian groups, basically. Well, the Anunnaki groups were losing control of the grids, and they thought they were going to lose, so they decided to be friends, and they wanted to work with the Guardians instead. So they entered, not because they wanted to, but because they saw it as an opportunity to possibly gain an advantage, which is how they used it. Palladian-Syrian agreements were between whole bunches of different Anunnaki-backed races from the Wisedet Matrix and from Phantom Matrix. They are the major names you will see in the New Age movement. I will probably, if I have a little bit of time before the end off camera, talk a little bit about some of them, because they're right now doing very aggressive work, spreading all sorts of things to make sure everybody can anchor the blue flame frequency, or the blue sword frequency. The agreements of the Palladian-Syrian agreements were supposed to be that they were going to combine their grids that they had stolen from the Atlantean period. They were going to combine them with the Guardian grids. And through that combined power, supposedly under the Christos, we were going to be able to clear the Draconian grids so they couldn't do anything and the fall wouldn't happen. Well, it was not an agreement that the Anunnaki groups wanted to make in the first place. They only did it because they were losing grid control to the Dracs. Once the agreements were made, and we knew it was a risk, but it was worth a try because it would have gotten worse, which it's getting now, if the opportunity for a negotiation or a peace treaty hadn't been offered, they broke the peace treaty of the Palladian-Syrian agreements through groups of them, like not all at once, but between what's called the stellar bridge, or that frequency bridge that begins the activation of the stargates. Once it was known the stargates were going to open, that's when they started to defect from the Palladian-Syrian agreements, because that's when they realized, all through the 90s, from 1992 up to the year 2000, when finally it was known that we would definitely have the gates opening, they had begun, like some of them had defected early, others had stayed right up to the end, but they had combined their grids with some of ours, some of the remaining grids that Guardians had left in the planet, which meant their communication lines as well. Now, both of the fallen races have had about 90% control over the communication grids on this planet through the crystal pylon temples, like the crystal base that they found in Chihuahua, Mexico, ever since Atlantis, since 25,500 BC. That's why a lot of people say, well, how come nobody else is teaching this stuff? Because hardly anybody can reach anybody except the people from the black hole, because they've been controlling the communication lines. We've been in quarantine on this planet. Well, on September 12th of 2000, when we were in England, we got the edict, and very rarely will, like the Iani say, just do this now. We can't tell you why, just do it. And we went home, and then they, let the information come. They said a war edict has been issued. The Palladian-Syrian agreements have been completely broken. The sides, some of the sides that had been fighting with each other on the Draconian side and the Anunnaki sides, decided to join forces. Not all of them. Now, there's a whole group of Draconian Omicron that are fighting these guys, but they formed something called the United Intruder Resistance. This is not just something that's affecting our planet. It's something that goes all the way up the Stargate system, all the way up into the Lyra system. It's happening in Vega. There was a period of Orion Wars that were taking place in the 1980s, unbeknownst to us. So, this United Intruder Resistance was formed as by this time, the Anunnaki, because of their lip service to the peace agreement with us, have been able to get access to more of the few grids that we had left. So literally, they figured, now we can overthrow the other side. Now we got some of the Dracs joining us, no problem. So they broke the agreements, basically, thumped their nose at us, and said, fine, see you in hell, because we're going for it. And what we're in the middle of now is the result of that. After that time period, the history had to be released. Part of the agreements, the Palladian-Syrian agreements, had been that we would be quiet for a while, as long as they behaved and they didn't try to do this nasty thing, that we would give them about 50 years to well, they were going to let people know they were there. We were going to have ET visitors saying, hello, we're your visitors from the sky. And they were going to have a chance to prove themselves before the whole truth was revealed. In that way, because if the whole truth was revealed and then they tried to come in and say, yeah, but we're on the good side now, most humans are not at a level of spiritual development where they'd care. I don't care if you're being nice now. Look what you did. They would have been hated and they would have been attacked and it would have been a mess. So part of the concession that the Guardians had made was to not reveal the heavy stuff of the history that showed how bad they've been acting toward this place. And when the War Edict was issued, it was not just issued for Guardians on this planet, it was issued against the Founders races in literally the primal light and sound fields. The last time they did that was during the Electric Wars 5.5 million years ago on this planet. And literally the human and indigo population was decimated. They were destroyed. It had to be reseeded. The whole seeding had to be done over again. When Founders races wars take place, you have wild flying beams of all sorts of things that fly through planetary fields and cause pole shift all over the place and vaporize everything it touches, and something called red pulse, which is something that's emitted by the sun naturally, but under unnatural conditions it becomes the most deadly weapon. Now, what we're in the middle of at this point is another drama that has reached a peak equivalent to what took place just before the Electric Wars. If it weren't for the fact that they just caught themselves in their own fishing net, we would be on evac, because there's a plan that has to do with what we talked about in the beginning when I first introduced myself to you and said, oh yeah, by the way, this thing called wormwood, which is a battle star, is going to be coming in our direction. This is not our plan, this is theirs. So we're going to talk about, I don't have a lot of time to cover history, but the history is available in other places, and a lot of you have heard it already. The people who are new, just know it is published. There's a lot of it published in the Voyagers Volume 2 section. That was like a quick overview after the emergency release issue was given, after the War Edict was given to us, where we had to release the history. So people started to know, because what people are being used for now, masses of people, most of the New Age movement right now is helping people to run Metatronic code. Most of the favored teachers, and some of the teachers themselves don't know. They think they're running good stuff. So there's a deception of a proportion that's actually unbelievable unless you realize that the only people that have been able to communicate with people here since 25,500 BC have been primarily those who had the communication lines. It's not like somebody hijacking your planetary phone lines, and the only ones who can get through are the bad guys. That's what it's been like. And right now, we are facing a very interesting set of circumstances, but it's also let's say an expedited healing. This could have been prolonged. It could have been prolonged another 2,000 years if the Palladian-Syrian agreements had worked out, because our guys had agreed not to finalize setting the divine blueprint, to give them another 2,000 years to evolve their hybrid races here so they could evolve through bioregenesis. They took that opportunity away from their races here when they broke the Palladian-Syrian agreements. So right now, we have a bunch of people that are still very much asleep. The ones who are waking up, many of them are waking up on the Metatronic code, which means they're going to be body snatched progressively as we go along, while we watch shadow dancers come in and become them. And then you have a bunch of humans and indigos trying to wake up too. And what's interesting is a lot of the tools that they had given theirs to wake up actually got us to the point where we could start to wake up. And now that we're waking up, we're having to look at a kind of difficult reality. And the difficult reality is we're in the middle of the final conflict drama. This isn't heavy, dark stuff, but it's big stuff that you need to pay attention to. We've got the solution. The solution is in the flame body activations. You've got the beginning of yours now. What you do with that is up to each of you. You don't have to believe the things we tell you. You don't have to work with any of the technologies. We hope you do, because we know where it'll get you compared to where it will get you if you don't. But that's completely a decision that's respected by all of the Guardian races. We don't judge people by what they decide, what belief system they decide to honor. We can feel sad if we know the choices and they don't, or they don't want to hear them. There's not a lot you can do. But what we're moving into has to do with this. I'm going to take my jacket off for this. Uh-oh, I feel the heat coming in. What's up? All right, something's activating. Hoi. I just got this burst of heat that came up from my feet. All right, I'm used to that, actually. We're getting a lot of those lately. Now, I'm going to get my pointer out for this. The history, I will do one thing before I get into this graph. I will read a section on the history that will wrap up pretty quickly for everybody. There it is. It's on page 67. I'm just going to read a little bit from there, and that will give you a roundup of how this mess began. And it's a piece about shadow dancers. And sometimes it's easiest just to read it, and sometimes when I read it, little bits of detail get thrown in on the side. So the shadow dancer attachments are highly intelligent, intellectually sophisticated, fallen angelic races existing within the 11.5 reverse dimensional fields of the Wysadek black hole system, who long ago chose to adopt the Antichristos, which means cut off from the universal D12 divine blueprint, reversed matrix Metatronic code. Shadow dancer races were created 150 billion years ago when their universal Vecca system from a different Akasha A spectra fell to Antichristos imploding black hole status, following their race's hybridization with a group of fallen races from our phantom matrix black hole. Our phantom matrix black hole occurred during the Lyran Elohim Wars 250 billion years ago, Founders Race Wars. Now we cover some of that history in various tapes and things. I've talked about that. Now the Wysadek races originally agreed to host matrix and assist in the reverse mutation of certain race strains from our universal Vecca that had fallen to phantom matrix black hole status during the Lyran Elohim Wars 250 billion years ago. Their hybridization healing experiments failed, serving instead to amplify the original phantom matrix race genetic mutations among their own race lines. Due to the advanced DNA template mutations and consciousness distortions they had created for themselves through employing tactics of shield template combining that the Janus Masters races from the higher Echo worlds had strongly advised them against, the Wysadek races fell into severe polarity consciousness and began fighting within their own universal Vecca. The Wysadek races refused to take responsibility for the free will actions they chose in misapplying natural creation physics, and adopted an attitude of vengeful blaming of the races from our time matrix for their decline. They cited the cause of their de-evolution as being the host matrix they originally offered to our fallen phantom matrix races. In an attempt to assist the Wysadek races to redirect their evolution, the Brahmarama, Seraphai, and Elohai races of our time matrix agreed to their demands of removing certain phantom matrix race strains from their time matrix and relocating them back into our phantom matrix from which they originally fell. Remaining phantom race strains, their original mutation now amplified, were returned to our phantom matrix under quarantine. They were offered an advanced re-evolution program through which they could rapidly re-evolve out of phantom matrix through a Brahmarama Elohim host matrix, as they posed a threat to the continued re-evolution of the fallen races that had remained in phantom matrix. A polarization refraction lens called the Eye of Metatron was installed 150 billion years ago at the 11.5 Universal Stargate 12 Lyra Aramatena, which is the divine blueprint Stargate 12 for our time matrix, between phantom and our living time matrix. The lens served to channel a portion of our universal Vecca life force currents from our universal Vecca D15 primal light field into the quarantined portion of the phantom system, and created a quarantined path of ascension via host matrix for the returning races. Originally, the Great White Brotherhood was put in charge of re-evolving them because it was their groups of Anunnaki who had fallen. Now, the host matrix project was entrusted to an Elohim collective called Metatron of the Giovanni Entity Collective. This is the Great White Brotherhood's family when you trace it all the way out. The original family line from which the quarantined races had fallen. When the Eye of Metatron was installed, mutated hybrid rebel races of the Wysadek matrix misused the Stargate Templar system's powers of their universal Vecca in an attempt to break into Phantom Matrix to gain control of the lens. Their attempt raid failed, destroying their divine blueprint Universal Stargate 12 and plunging their matrix into imploding black hole status. The Metatron Collective failed in numerous attempts of re-evolving the quarantined phantom races, losing more of its consciousness fields to the phantom matrix. The Metatron Collective itself finally fell to phantom. Literally, it took down a Rishi collective from the primal light fields. Through the Metatron's misuse, and their collective, it's not just a being called Metatron, it is a collective of consciousness that used to be a Rishik level being. Through the Metatron's misuse of the Eye of Metatron lens, the quarantine in Phantom Matrix was broken, and Phantom Matrix digressed into progressive hybridization mutation and escalating war between the Phantom races. During the Gaian-Orion Phantom Matrix Wars 570 million years ago, the Metatron Collective made deals with the warring Weesadek races from the Weesadek black hole system and allowed the Weesadeks to use the Metatron lens to create a wormhole called the Path of Arimathea between the Weesadek and Phantom matrices. Excuse me. Sorry. The Weesadek Metatron Alliance used the lens to progressively create the Beast Machine, through which the Antichristos Metatronic code for artificially sustained energy vampiring life, a permanent irreversible template mutation, was born via forced shields bonding. And that's forcing the shields to electromagnetically bond between the universal shields of Phantom Matrix, our Time Matrix, and the Weesadek Black Hole. When the Beast was used to create interface with our system, our universal Vecca shadow world was born. The D11.5 reverse matrix dark avatar collectives of the Weesadek Black Hole, who carry the permanent and irreparable mutation of the Metatronic code, became our Shadow Dancer attachments. The Shadow Dancers use the sophisticated external antichristic Templar technologies of the Beast and the Shadow to progressively drain life force energies and hijack living consciousness from our universal Vecca system. With the birth of the Beast and the Shadow Dancers came the simultaneous unnatural birth of the shadow body, elementals, and elemental attachments and figment attachments. Now, that gives you a really quick, in a nutshell, how this mess began with the name Metatron involved with it and where the Beast began. There's a whole progression of history. Now, this is the Beast that we're talking about here. The eye of Metatron would be originally, there's another eye that's up there that we don't have to get into right now. It's called the Eye of Brahman, which is another interface system, but they're trying to get that one. In fact, see, this is a lens system that, again, brings some of our primal light field currents down into at a different angle, and it was used to actually help sustain this system after the Lyran Elohim Wars when Phantom was created. What the Metatronic crew want to do is get a hold of that one as well, because it's higher. It reaches higher into the light fields, and through that they could get control of the inner Eka and bring it down. Now, the Eye of Metatron lens is here. Now, what this wild-looking thing is, if you look at only half of it, right? Follow these dotted lines. That's one Cathara grid, right? And that's another Cathara grid here. They're fused together artificially and held together with the Metatronic heart implants, which literally force a shield bond, an electromagnetic shield bond, between the Weesadek matrix and Phantom, which Phantom is a part of our matrix, so it plugs into our matrix. What they've been doing progressively over a very long history, now this list of names here applies to the planetary systems, the planets that their stargates are located in, their reverse matrix stargates in their system, the Weesadek black hole. These are the ones that were part of our Phantom system, and these are our stargates, and they all line up in frequency. Now, where do I start with this? All right, with the history, 150 billion years ago is when the Eye of Metatron lens was created by the good guys to try to help the ones that had fallen in both places, which were the Phantom Matrix people and the, particularly to get the Phantom Matrix hybrid ones back out, the ones that had been hosted over into the Metatronic group and then brought back over because they got kicked out of the other matrix. They were to be gotten out through a particular ascension passage, or kind of like an artificial Stargate passage, that would get them up and out where they could be hosted into the entity levels of the other matrix that was falling. Now, the Eye of Metatron lens was raided during what were called the Gaian-Orion Wars, and this was when it finally fell under control. The entity Metatron fell in this process, and the entity Metatron handed it over, basically, to the Weesadek groups. And during a period called the Gaian-Orion Wars that were in our system, and in the Phantom, and in Weesadek, that was 570 million years ago, they began the first setup of implants. They got control of the lens, and they began the first setup of the black heart implants, and began the building of their Cathara grid for the Antichristos reverse matrix universal structure. There was a progression of invasions from Weesadek into Phantom. Some of the Phantom races were resisting them. They were fighting with them too. So you had polarity even in the Phantom matrix. Some of them wanted to go the Weesadek way, others didn't. They wanted to go the healing way. You had our guys getting attacked by both sides all the time. It was our history here. It's like a good thing we had like ignorance is bliss for a while. And it was a nice break, because the history here has been very, very sad and never peaceful. There's been fighting in this matrix for literally 250 billion years, but it's been progressively getting worse. Now, and this here is the, wait a minute, somewhere here is the Aramatera wormhole. All right, here, the planet that they used to interface the Metatron lens through that planet and an artificial gate that was created in that planet into the Phantom Matrix was, the planet's called Aramatzus, and it's called the Arimathea wormhole. Now there's a whole system of Christian belief that's following the path of Arimathea, thinking they're following the Grail line of Jesus Christ. They're not. All right. Now, when we come down to this period where this part of their matrix began to form, where this part of the interface, these black hearts, began to be set up and started to be activated, there's a period of time this area was captured, and it includes part of our grids, where our phantom grids that had already fallen would plug into here, where they progressively started getting control of our gates by, during these series of wars. This was during what was called the Terran-Syrian Wars, 550 million years ago. Now, what I forgot to mention here, the first races that were the guardian races in this time matrix were called the Azarites. That's why we use, that's the genetic affiliation we're part of. They were absolutely decimated and pulled into Phantom when those wars took place. There had to be a new race line created that held the coding of the three founders' races, so everything that came out of our matrix could be regenerated, because the Guardian line would hold the templates, so they could actually use the Guardian DNA to regenerate the templates for anything else in our matrix. So the Azarite line was pretty much destroyed. There were some remnants of it left. Some of them were hijacked. There's a whole group of, and they were blue, by the way, they were blue people. There's a whole group of them that their gene code was used to hybridize with some of the mostly draconian agenda Weesadek groups. So you actually have some very nasty blue people running around out there. They were all involved with the Montauk Project and the Philadelphia experiment and stuff. They're not our guys, but they hijacked our gene code. Now, next phase was the Terran-Syrian Wars, 550 million years ago. This was when the fall of Tara, that's described in Voyages Volume 2, and first and second edition, talks all about that. That's how our solar system down here is created. It literally was a byproduct of the fall of Terra, but it was a controlled fall, so it didn't just completely go to space dust. But literally, our solar system shifted from where it originally was. It was originally part of the Palladian system. So that took place 550 million years ago. In between this period, there was a new guardian race that needed to be created, and they were created 568 million years ago. Following this event, 570 million years ago, 568 million years ago, the Oraphim were created, which were technically the indigo children. They took the Azarite race strain, what was left of the gene code, and again strengthened it and recombined it with the Elohim races and the founders races, and they created what were called the Oraphim angelic humans, and they were the indigo strain, where they had 24 to 48 DNA strand templates. From them, in this time period, there was another smaller version, the 12-strand human was created. Actually, first a 24-strand human that was called the Turanicium II angelic human, and then they were downstepped when the Terran Wars happened and the Earth system fell. Earth used to be part of Terra. When it fell, there was another race line from them stepped down that could live in this density down here comfortably, and that was a Turanicium I 12-strand human. So literally the purpose of our being in this whole game was because of this whole thing in the first place. We were a group of avatars and ascendant masters that wanted to help, and that's why we're still here. So this happened 550 million years ago. They got this part of the beast going. Now, then there was something called, let's see, oh wait. Now, 250 million years ago to 25 million years ago, they began seeding the Turanicium I humans on parallel Earth and on Earth 25 million years ago. The wars came here at that point. 5.5 million years ago is when the electric wars happened again. The same guys fighting, trying to take over. Humans were destroyed on Earth, and they had to be reseeded again, and they were reseeded again. after this period. 4.5 million years ago, there was a great galactic war, which is some of the history that they like to tell in their channeled stuff and that kind of stuff, where supposedly the Dracs won that round, and they got to come in and get control of more of the grids. These are the beings, a lot of the dinosaurs that they find were the monitors that were put here, animal forms that weren't highly intelligent or anything, but they were like having eyes and ears and big feet to stomp on things and big teeth to eat them with. Down here, they were the grid guardians of the draconian races, mostly. Some of them were hybridized with the reptilian races. So actually, some of the dinosaurs are actually related to insects more than they're related to what you would consider a standard reptile. There's a lot of taking DNA templates of all sorts of things that don't belong together and mushing them together that have been put here on Earth to grow, to serve as the eyes, ears, and teeth of things from other places. Dinosaurs were one of them. Some of them were benign because the guardian groups would always try to help whatever race strain it was, and if you could get its collective, like its oversoul or something, to agree to enter Animal Covenant, they would try to bioregenerate it. So some of the dinosaurs, particularly the ones that were plant eaters, were like an upgrade that we were trying to help them, get out of the total energy vampiring thing, I see you, I eat you kind of mentality, right? Yeah. Now, this is the last section that they're trying to build here. What they're trying to do is create a reverse matrix that has 11.5 stargates, which is the built on the Metatronic code, which means each of their dimensions have 8 subfrequency bands instead of 12, and they all run in reverse mathematical order. Now, they intend to capture the rest of this. Now, the rest of this has to do, look at this, they got Earth, right? They got Earth during this period. They got a big portion of our grids. There was something called the wall in time that was put up 5.5 million years ago. It was a cap in the shields, literally a frequency cap run by the Guardians to stop the whole thing from falling in. And that cap has been broken at times, then put back over, broken and put back over. That's what's been going on in our recent history as well. The whole thing about Montauk Project and the Philadelphia experiment, they were all about attempts to open the cap on the wormhole again. They did it in Atlantis a couple of times as well. So they already have a huge portion of Earth's grids and the solar grids. They just want to get the rest of this. It's the other 2 main gates in our system, and they've got the whole system, and that means they can just literally whip the whole thing around. Now, what they want to do is metatronically bond the whole thing all the way. This is the only heart implant that's not fully activated yet. They call that one the heart of Anubis. These names have to do with the names of their planets. Their D11 planet is Athenion. Their D10 is Anubion. Their D9 is Nabanti, which, if you're familiar with certain teachings out there, they teach you this is a really nice place to ascend to. Uversa is their D8 planet. Olympion is their D7. Apollyon is their D6, and that's the one that they're linking through on the 666, the Apollyon. And it's interesting because there's some teachings out there that I think are old. They're derived from something in the Bible or in the Jewish traditions that talk about the Antichrist and as Apollyon and name it as Apollyon. And they are right. That is the 666 gate link that they are planning to make through into our system fully. Artisma is their 5 planet. Morantia is their 4 planet, which is another one that you'll find, I believe, in the same set of New Age teachings that are out there that use this word. Osirion, the whole Osiris mysteries from ancient Egypt, all this was tied into it. The Great Pyramid was built partially by our guys, partially by their guys when they were supposedly working the Emerald Covenant, and then they took it over and began to use it to assist in this process. Giza to this day is used to assist in the Metatronic process, and boy, are they doing some activations these days. All right, Herculon is their D2 planet. Urantia is their D1 planet, and that right there reveals where these other couple of names came out of, because that is the name, they still use that name. So they're literally linking through these gate sets. I won't go through every one of them. That you have this in microscopic form, this graph, in one of the front matter graphs that are like the consolidated ones. You could blow it up if you want to, if it's important to you to look at the names of these things. But what it comes down to is they're trying to create this cube matrix, which the energy turns in on itself, basically, and it can feed off other systems as long as it can run pipelines in to suck the energy off their shields through the metatrotic bonds. What they're trying to do is first get this one, then they want to take the inner ecosystem down so they can keep eating. Basically, as long as they can keep feeding their system artificially with energy, it won't implode on itself. They've created a mess for themselves, and they're trying to drag everybody else into it. Now, if they create this, what it will make is this thingy down here. They call this the 7 heads of the beast. Now, it's really funny because they talk about the 7 heads of the beast in the Bible and the one head that's wounded. It was hurt. How they were, the one head that was hurt. The one head that was hurt is the one that's not fully functioning yet because they don't have the bottom bond in. It's also called the artificial seed of life, or the seed of artificial life. That's what it is. There, yeah. Here's the, That's right, because if you look at this without the structure of the beast in the middle of it, see, this is showing you the electrostatic, falsely created radial bodies that will form their electrostatic universes. You can't evolve in those universes. You just go around in circles until you implode, basically, unless you keep feeding on something. Now, this seed, if you take away this stuff in the middle of it, this seed shape, this thing here with the one around it, the seed of artificial life, would represent the core of these seeds. We didn't get into in this one, but in some of the other workshops we've got into the top level of the Akasha Aya, the first 15 spheres that form the Akasha God seed, and that is the natural seed of life. All right, this would represent like the core taken out of it. They've tried to use the same structure of creation to recreate creation in their own image and in their own attitude without wanting to participate except to feed off the rest of creation. The teachings that use this, they'll usually show a Merkaba field like this in here and down like that. That is a phase-locked Merkaba. It cannot fully spin. It just feeds on itself and holds the static field inside. So when you start to see the sophistication of the mechanics is when you start to see some of the things you might have been taught in other workshops, in other books, by other teachers that are teaching ascension mechanics. Start to see where they fit. I didn't like the fact that I had to reveal this. I have no gripes with these people at all, not even the big bag dark ones, that are playing on the other side, but particularly the people on this side that half the time don't even know, oh, I'm channeling Toth, isn't that great? No, but they don't know it isn't, because Toth thinks it's pretty great and he talks himself up pretty good. So you feel real important if Toth actually talks to you. I mean, the deception that's been going on here, it's not just Toth. Enoch was a part of this for a long time. There's a whole history that talks about Toth and Enoch and how originally they were appointed as guardian beings that would try to help evolve the fallen ones. And at different times during the Atlantean period, they defected from the Emerald Covenant. Toth defected from the Emerald Covenant on Earth, in Atlantis, in 22,000 through 26 BC time frame during that stellar activation cycle, and he helped to create the Eoni massacre and the invasion that took place here then. And Enoch bailed out of the Emerald Covenant in 10,500 BC. And what's nice about Enoch, though, is finally the Enoch Collective came back into the Emerald Covenant on what's called a redemption contract. He's going to fall. That group, that whole collective is going to fall because of the decisions that were made in Atlantis. But at least he's going with humility, and he's doing as best as he can to assist beings here. The persons who were talking with Enoch before 1983 were talking with him while he was still running the agenda of the black hole matrix. They don't know that, but that's what was happening. After 1983, Enoch wasn't talking to those persons anymore, but there was another collective appointed to call itself Enoch to make sure the game kept going, and the game is still going. So there's teachings out there. It's heartbreaking, because some of these teachings, we love these teachings because they gave us part of the truth, enough to get us at least to the point where we might understand what's being said now, And it's really, it's sad because the teachers involved themselves, they can be very loving and very sweet people. They don't know what they're doing to themselves, and they don't know what themselves are being used to do to other people. So this is the basic mechanisms of the beast, what it's intended to do. Can we pull that down a little bit, honey, please?
Rejection contracts, they end up then going into the host matrix.
If they can, his template's too reversed. The Enochian collective can't get out now. They had opportunity before. If he'd stayed with it in 10,500 BC, they'd all have gotten out, and all of his race line here would have gotten out. They are one of their fallen grail lines, But now at this point, they have less than 31% template left. They're in monadic reversal. Once that happens, you can't pull it back. It's too much bonded to artificially bonded to the Metatronic template, and you can't pull it back. So, anyway, this is what it's intended to do. When that flaming blue sword comes, when they attempt to send the flaming blue sword down through the gates, through the 666 gate connection here, and this way, what it's intended to do is begin a spin, and this is where we get into like wormwood. Wormwood is actually going to be used, and I'll show you some graphs in a little bit about this, going to be used to create the torque that will allow this axis that belongs to Phantom. This is the Wiesadek axis over here, and this is our axis. It will actually create torque that will pull the Phantom axis into the Wiesadek axis and the Phantom axis together, and that will go, they'll create enough energy together to pull in our axis. And once this spiral is done, we fall. The matrix breaks off at the 11.5 and tumbles. That's their plan. And it's, I can't even comment on what it is. It is what it is. I've commented enough. There's nothing else I can really say. I think I'm going to move the history over just to see if there's time later. I'll go through that. Most important thing is getting the dynamics of what's going on with this. Yeah, just save those three. Yeah. Now, if you remember when we were talking about how the stargates interface, right? This is our Cathara grid Stargate system, universal Stargate system. That one over there that not much is happening on this graph would be the parallel gate system. That's our primal light field, and the parallel primal light field will be up there. Remember, this is where the Eka gates are, right? This little gate 11 here is that 311 gate connection. It's our 11 gate, and it's the 1, 2, 3rd gate for the inner Eka. Now, this is what their flaming blue sword is supposed to do. Comes through in the lock in here, it makes a triangulation through the 666 gate connection. Then it spreads out horizontally and vertically. As it spreads out vertically, it literally comes down the main vertical current and the 2 side poles of our Cathara grid, which means it hits all of the stargates. What this frequency is supposed to do when it hits, it's the D13 reversed base 8 current. It is intended to create automatic monadic reversal in the template, every template that it hits. And it has the power to do that because it's packing the power of a weak D13 current, which has the ability to override about D11.75 of our currents in our matrix. They've actually managed to figure out a way to bend energy in a way that they could actually shatter a divine blueprint of the D12 divine blueprint. They could blow up Stargate 12, which is what they want to do. Except if they blow up our Stargate 12, the rest comes down. Now, it goes all the way down to the Orion system through our densities. There's all through our density levels. It will also, when it hits Earth, now here's our sun, and this is that twin sun, Rabizod, that's in the next density up, but they're actually part of the same binary system that Earth's a part of. This is Earth over here. The blue sword current, as it comes down, would then stretch out this way and go through our galactic grids as well. Part of it would come up through the 666 connection through our 6th galactic gate, and the other part would come over through here, and it would send the sword going this way. And what this sword going this way will do, see this line here? This is our galactic, our universal, actually. Well, no, on this graph it's the galactic Merkaba. It would grab the Merkaba of the sun, the solar Merkaba, and take it and reverse it. So it would get it spinning in reverse. Once you do that, the whole system in it is going in reverse, which means it's going to fall. This is nasty. This is the flaming blue sword that some people are being taught to heal with. They're being taught to run it through their palm chakras so they can, assist other people because they don't know the difference. Nobody taught them about the triadic phase currents or the 15-dimensional currents that are natural that they could run on the Christos frequencies. So there's just so much deception going on. That's what just really makes me want to cry sometimes, because there's good people out there that decide they hate my guts because I said something they don't want to hear. I didn't do this to them. We're just the messengers here. Don't shoot the messengers. But anyway, this is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to reverse the galactic Merkaba. That would break off the connection up here at gate 12, which is our connection to the temple of Kamelohati in the center lock of the Eka system. That would also leave it would blow out their temple 3, all right, their Stargate 3, which would leave an open energy run that other things could be hooked into, where they could progressively try to raid those temples as well, and those Stargates in the Eka system as well. Now, the first solution we were going to do for this, and this was when it was like, okay, I guess we're going to have to do that because you guys are going to do this. Well, we have to do, they're going to open the gates and they're going to run the stabilizing currents. Stabilizing currents are called the arcs of Amareya. They are currents run directly from the M array of flame, as we've talked about, from the top all the way down. The M array of flame, it's also called the flame of loving mercy or the flame of love. That frequency will run down through the center point, the center temple of Kemelotai, through the gates here in Eka. And it was going to gate hop down what's called the path of Arimathea, which is the natural override path that was given in case anything like this ever happened. Stargate systems in the natural base 12 order are designed to have a reset button. And this was the reset button, so the whole thing didn't go down. The arcs would come from what would be that 13 point. It's actually our gate 12 point that is in the center lock between their gate 6 and their gate 7 that you can't see on this diagram. They arc down here, and they come through a series of gate connections. They jump from the center through gate 11, where the blue sword was on its way up. This would be on its way down. Come down through the path of Arimathea, which is through 12, hopping through 11, and it would come through 9, 6, 3, down to Earth. From Earth, it would go down to 1, and then also over into the galactic grid, and then it would arc back up into their gate 6, which would create literally like a stabilizing support. So when this started to tumble, it would hold at least part of it. It would hold part of the solar Merkaba together, and it would hold part of the planetary body together. But the only part of the grids that can anchor that arc, the grids are going to either anchor one or the other. The grids that are reversed now, they phase locked on March 23rd of 2002, when they activated, the United Resistance, Weesadek people, activated the Seal of Avalon, which set in motion the beginnings of the beast activation. The grid shut down. They phase locked into whatever particle spin they're going to be in. They're either Metatronic or they're not Metatronic, or they're stuck with the template in between, which is at 31 to 51% divine blueprint left. They talked about anything below 31% divine blueprint left is Metatronic. It can't be brought back, and it will run blue flame current, which means our planetary grids are going to separate, or we all go down. They're the only two options. The Guardian races have an obligation not to allow that to happen, and all they're doing is opening the gates on request from the highest levels. And in fact, the ones that are opening the gates are the ones up in the Akasha Aya level, not even down here on the top of the stairway to heaven. And the ones right below them are opening their gates. So if the Guardians, the Iani said, well, we're not going to open our gates because we think maybe we shouldn't do that, right? Good luck. It'll blow up their system, because you need to open the gates to let those arcs come through. If they come through and you didn't open them, it's going to blow them, But the Iani know. They understand what's going on here. And no matter how much you love a group of beings, even if you're giving them 250 billion years or even 150 million years to evolve, and they still don't want to evolve, respect their choice already. But you can't let them take down the entire matrix that could go into the next matrix. They could start taking down a series of these, and that can't be allowed to happen. And literally the Templar itself, the cosmic Templar itself, the consciousness of which it's composed, the God consciousness, will not allow that to happen, because that would defeat the original purpose and design, which was to be an eternal life perpetual motion matrix. It would become a finite black hole matrix that would feed on itself and then disappear. So that is against the original divine intention that it was created for in the first place. And born into its structure was the ability to self-sustain. So the Templar itself makes these decisions. It's the consequence of using energy poorly, the fate that they've brought on themselves. But we're in the middle of that fate right now. So this was the original plan of bringing these arcs through this way to create the stabilization factor. Now, there's another one. I think to the next graph. I think this is one that shows, which one does it show? Yeah. This is the mess as far as what that blue sword was supposed to do. I'll tell you this first, before I tell you the adjustment that's being made because they got themselves in trouble. Once the blue sword current activated here in our galactic grids, which is almost instantaneous, like once it comes into the grids up here, it flashes on in our grids down here, the galactic and the planetary ones. Now, once this was activated with the activation of the Metatronic seed atom that's at the 666 gate connection, once it's activated, it would begin to influence something called wormwood. Now, wormwood is something we talked about before, because it was originally created by the Phantom Matrix group, not by the Weesadeks, but the Weesadeks took over the mechanism because it was the perfect solution to how would they create enough energy push and pull to make this all happen, to actually make the theory work. Well, wormwood, now this is a little confusing. This is why I tried to outline some of the stuff in color. This little red dotted thing here, going up like this is actually the orbit of Nibiru, the planet Nibiru. Now, Nibiru used to be over here orbiting with us. It wasn't a phantom planet. It was part of our solar system. It was planet 12 originally. When they pulled Nibiru in, and this was after they also imploded Maldak, which was our planet 5 that's no longer there where the asteroid belt is, they took the portion of Maldak that was remaining, the largest portion, which had a size and weight and therefore potential to generate magnetic fields that was very similar to Nibiru's, and they literally strung them into counter orbit, where one would come out and the other, like, all right, this is our system first of all here. One would pop into our system. Let's say Nibiru would come into our system for a pass, and while that was happening, on the other side, in Phantom, Wormwood would go through. And then when Wormwood would come up, Nibiru would be in Phantom. So this is something the scientists and the people that are tracking Planet X and all that stuff that think they know so much about it, they don't even realize there are two bodies that they've been tracking. It has, I believe, a 3,657.8 year orbit where it comes through our system once every that period of time. Nibiru came through before. Wormwood's on its way in now. Now they're seeing Nibiru out in the Orion system because it temporarily, if Wormwood's popped off, you would see a little bit. There's a brief period where, when Wormwood's getting ready to come up, where we see there's a loop that's made here where Nibiru actually comes up, and you would see it around our Orion system. Then it would go into Phantom through the Orion gates. You won't see it anymore. So they're watching it up here, and the scientists already know that there's something flying around up there. What they don't know is there's going to be something else coming in at a different angle completely, but it's going to look like that thing jumped down here. How did it get there that fast? It's going to be one of those things that science is looking at this stuff and going, how the hell did that happen? That can't happen. Oh, yes, it can, especially if there's two of them and you don't know it. So when things go into Phantom, we don't see them from here because it's a different angular rotational particle spin. So literally, you don't see it and you can't track it. You can see some of the movements, though. Some of those movement sciences are tracing with particles and things that you can tell something's influencing them, even though you can't see the thing that's influencing them, are actually coming from Phantom. Now, the normal orbit of both of them would come up through, they come up behind the sun, it'd pass through Earth, where it would be seen from Earth, and it would cause a reverb effect, where there'd be a little bit of pole tilt every time it happened, not necessarily a massive cataclysmic one, but a little bit. This is part of why we have our tilt in the axis, or in the wobble, in our spin, on our planetary spin right now. But it would come up, and then it would pass back out, and it would go up through, and go up out past the gates. It would go out through the Rabizod gate, which is the density. It would go out into density 2 through the sun, and just continue out where we wouldn't see it anymore. And the other one would be on its path in. Now, what this blue sword does is change all that. This is where the Weesadex took over the apparatus. What the Weesadex did was create a frequency that has the ability, once it's activated, let me see if I can describe this, because this was just given to me last night exactly how this works, okay? With this frequency coming down, it would actually catch. Now, there's a lock here, all right, where Nibiru and Wormwood would usually come up into our system. They come up in the asteroid belt, between the asteroid belt and Jupiter, because there's a galactic lock there. Okay, one of those lock systems, not the gates, but the locks, actually comes up from Phantom through the lock. Now, their frequencies, when you have this frequency coming down this way, the blue sword, and you have this one going over this way, right through the lock, it intercepts the Nibiru body, and instead of the thing continuing, going this way and popping up here and then continuing out this way, it hits it, it pulses it. So it goes this way, and it follows the path of the blue sword. And the blue sword is pulsed, partially regulated by Jupiter, actually, and it comes through to cross between Earth and the sun. Talk about major damage. All right, right there. Anybody standing here if this happened? You wouldn't be standing there anymore. Let me change hands here. My arm's getting tired. So it would come through. Now, what this was meant to do, right here, it was meant to create and generate what's called a red pulse from the sun, an artificial red pulse. An artificial red, well, not an artificial one, to expedite the creation of the natural red pulse. A red pulse is a natural phenomenon. It's called red because it's in the D1 frequency bands, which is the red light spectra. It is in normal ascension cycles or Stargate cycles. The solar shield at a certain point, when the whole Stargates were open, when Stargate 12 finally finished opening, there would be a pulse of this energy sent to the planetary shield to hold the gates open for a while. And it's natural. It's a natural part of the ascension cycle. But that can be misdirected. If a red pulse comes through, it's a base 12 pulse, which means it doesn't, if your shields can't run base 12, if they're distorted or mutated, it will crush the shields. It vaporizes them. It turns them into space dust particles. Now, if you could harness those space dust particles in a net or an electrostatic field and drag it somewhere else, you could theoretically reassemble the pieces on the other side. This is what they're trying to do. They want to generate an early red pulse. We're not due for a red pulse here until 2012, when the last Stargate 12 is due to fully open. And by that time, if these guys weren't messing with things, the Guardians would have run most of that red pulse through the temples, the inner Eka temples. That's why they have the Q sites here, so they could pull that frequency through and run it there, because our grids are still too damaged to hold the whole thing. But we would still get the benefit of having enough of it that it would get us into the next level of our natural time cycles, planetary-wise. Well, what this mess with Wormwood's supposed to do is accelerate the production of the red pulse, because it's creating another electromagnetic effect with a large body that's coming past here. It would accelerate this, and it would make the solar gate release that flare of red pulse much sooner than it's supposed to. That flare would trigger, would hit Earth, and it would begin the process of shattering the shields. But the shields right now are in a net. They're in that electrostatic field that they have generated through all these implant systems and everything. So they'd shatter, but they'd be held together, like blowing up a hologram, but holding the pieces together. But they would be like a cracked picture. That's kind of what it's like. And they're planning to take out any of the 9th through 12th subfrequency bands in that picture all the way up the dimensional scale. Now, once they accomplished that, what they wanted to do was have enough of the red pulse to once it hit Earth's Templar, the red pulse would continue and go up the gate chain from there and from the solar gate. Now, the way they make it do that, go through from the solar gate, would be by this twist around. It's like a ricochet around the sun, and they control that through this triangulation of the blue sword crossbar in the galactic grid. They create a triangulation over here that actually bends it and makes it come back around where it wouldn't normally do that. You know, they're like, picture a big asteroid coming through, and why the heck did it go around the sun and then come back again? That was weird. It wouldn't normally behave that way, but it rides the blue sword current through this. Now, what that does is it forces closed solar gate 4 once it opens. Once that happens, red pulse shoots up through the Templar there. The Earth's grids, the Earth's gates would shut down when you shut gates after they started to open, and it blows them. It would blow the gates here, and it would send red pulse all the way up to there, and that's what they're after. That's how they designed this beast to behave, and that's where Wormwood and Nibiru fit into the whole picture. Now, this green thing over here is one of, and these bigger things here, these gates here, these gates correspond to, if you're looking at the Eka God World maps, when you go up into the Akasha level, okay, those much higher gates on the higher steps, this is where pillars are going to come down, where the roof-shaped pillars are going to anchor from here into here and then down into here. But this area here in the diagram, I mean, it's not going to look like this hanging out the side of our solar system, but it's kind of like, it's indicative of what is going to be the bridge zone. It's a frequency pillar that's being set down, that whatever grids here that the Amareya arcs can hold will be gently shifted there while this all shifts down. Whatever's going to fall goes, but whatever can stay up will be held in to the bridge zone. Now, because they got themselves in trouble, it's going to work a little differently. They got themselves in trouble because, well, how did this go? Let me start at the beginning with it. Now, they were pretty confident this was going to happen. But if there was a little problem, here's where I start. All right, there's a little problem with the fact that they weren't going to do this till 2011. It was scheduled for 2011, which meant they were supposedly going to have more grids on Earth under their control. But there's this whole area of the planetary grids, and even up in the galactic scale, that fit into a 31 to 51% divine blueprint left. They're too low to be able to be spliced into the bridge zone, and they're too, they don't have enough divine blueprint to be spliced into the bridge zone, but they have too much to fall gently, and they've created a stasis, a phase lock, where they're stuck, and it's keeping the net field open, which means if they let the red pulse come in and shatter the template here, it will be drawn in to their net by the parts of the shields that still hold divine blueprint, and that'll go right through their metachronic code, right into their black hole system. It'll blow their net, and it'll explode their black hole. So they will get instant ascension back to particle dust. uh-oh. There's an old saying, give them enough rope and they hang themselves. I mean, they've kind of done that. And boy, are they aggravated? They are aggravated. They're really pissed off. Ooh, not happy because they had to say, all right, we're ready to negotiate now, right? Now, they don't want peace. The drama is far beyond that at this point, and we've released too much information here for them to care anymore because there's been enough put back in the planetary memory banks and enough people carrying enough of the knowledge and realizing it's true that they'll never be able to play games here the same way again because knowledge spreads. And it might not be this generation, but if things were even peaceful and just this much knowledge got out in this generation, give them about 4 or 5 generations, how many people would know? Do you think it'd be easy to come in and take over a planet and pretend you're the creator gods then? Not very. All right, so anyway. Now, they got themselves in trouble because if the pulse comes through, the red pulse comes through, it will go into the net field and explode their black hole system. Now, that will create quite a mess here too, because it will take this down. This would be evac time. If this can't be stopped at this point, everybody needs to run, including theirs. All right, except they don't have anywhere to run to. They won't evac. Why should they? They have nowhere to evac to, because if this happens and it destroys this system, that pulse is going right down and it's going to put them all back to space dust. So the black hole problem will be gone. But that's not the way anybody wants it to end. I mean, the guardian races are happy, at least, all right, fine. You want to do what you're doing. You don't ever want to come back into the Christos thing, that's fine. But we don't want them to suffer either. Guardians don't want anybody to suffer. They're not vengeful beings. Like, see, you deserve it. After all you did, well, you deserve it. Well, they do deserve it. They got what they asked for. They still don't get the law of reciprocity, though they give wonderful lip service to it in their teachings. What goes around comes around. But that doesn't mean that you don't care. The guardians will always care, and they'll always be love for those beings. If they can have another 2 billion years of evolution in their system, under their rules, the way they want to do it before they implode, which is a choice. You can't even help them anymore. We've been trying to help them for all these eons, and you can't take the templates apart anymore. If at least they will have 2 billion years of evolution to experience, to still know themselves, to hopefully work out some of their issues. So maybe at least they get a glimmering of remembering. That's not likely, but at least they still have their life. Because nobody, it's kind of like that goody two-shoes thing that guardians tend to have, where no matter how bad it was, you might hate the behavior, but you still love the being. And that's how guardian races feel about them. You'll be very angry about the behavior, especially when you see what it's done to populations over and over again. This isn't the only planet they've done this to, but this is the most important one at this point because of its place within the beast mechanism. They took down Procyon that way, the star we call Procyon. There was a beautiful race of beings that were part of the Seraphi family that were called the Ceres, that they looked human, hominid, and they were blonde. They call them the Nordics now. They took over the gene code, and now you have Nordic ETs running around on this planet, and people in the abduction scenario have seen them. These are working for the Weesadex. They took over the body pattern. They hybridized it with their own. This is how they even got in human form in the first place. They weren't human. The Weesadex are beetles. They're large gold insect things, scarab-type beetles. That's why scarab beetles were sacred in Egypt. Yep. Do what? Oh, I got my hanger string is there. Yeah. Now, anyway, so at least we all agree on one thing, or at least most of us. There's a few kamikazes over there that would rather die with their swords in hand, that kind of thing. Fine, let it implode. We don't want to agree with anybody. But so there's still some resistance, but the United Resistance, United Intruder Resistance groups, which are the ones that have both Drac and Anunnaki Weesadex that joined forces even though they don't like each other, to be the conquerors, they are the ones who requested what's called the Truce of Loving Mercy. And that's where, help! We hate your guts, but would you please do something? Because they can't stop it. Now that it's released, they released the second set of activation codes for the Blue Sword on July 24th. And they assumed, now if they could do, the one thing they could do, and this was their gamble, if they could blow out this temple, it would stop the running of the Arcs of Amaria, which means they could take the whole thing down and it would work. It was a dumb gamble. That's a very fortified, frequency fortified stargate. It's the Agartha stargate of D3 of the dimension 3 in the inner Eka universe, stargate of inner Earth, what would be considered inner Earth. And they attempted. There was a raid made on it. There was a brief battling that was going on their side, and it was like kind of funny because nothing like getting shot back at by your own bullets. They're not shooting bullets; they're shooting light beams and sound beams. But when you have a force field over something, and that force field's strong enough, you just get hit back in the face with whatever you throw at it. And that's about what happened. They realized, uh-oh, that didn't work. And the opportunity they had to do that, the window closed. This was happening while we were on the Bermuda trip, which was wild. We didn't know about it. We had this contact experience with the Ianis, like where they were coming down they were projecting, astral projecting down to visit with us, and they got stuck down here. What do you mean you got stuck? How are you stuck? There's a little problem up there at gate 311. We'll talk about it later. And we all went home with an Iani buddy, kind of like, and it's like anybody that didn't want theirs to go with them, just leave them with Az and me, and they'll come home with us, But I was like, what is going on, Ma? I said, well, they're attacking the Agartha temple at the moment. Who do you think? It was actually the Archangel Michael crew. Okay, that group of them. They are part of the Nephilim leaders of the Anunnaki group of the Weesadex. All right, that name, we reveal some of that in the Voyagers book. I mean, this is no angel. In fact, the Guardians kind of refer to him as Archdemon Michael. And there's a whole family of them that go with him. But anyway, what happened by August 1st? Now, I don't know if any of the people from the Bermuda trip are here.